I'm not your ATM, Vanessa. This has to stop. The confrontation erupted in our once peaceful living room. I, Jenna, stood defiantly before my mother-in-law, Vanessa, and my husband, Ethan. Vanessa lounged on the couch, her face a twisted mixture of surprise and contempt, while Ethan lingered awkwardly, his expression blank. This is my son's house, Jenna. I'll spend as I please. Vanessa snapped back, her voice cold and dismissive. It felt like a bad dream. Ethan and I had begun our journey together, filled with dreams and love, but those days were now just a distant echo. The man I had married, once so loving and understanding, had transformed into someone unrecognizable, parroting his mother's harsh words and ignoring my pleas. Ethan, you see this, right? You understand how wrong this is? I implored, turning to my husband, desperate for an ally. But Ethan just shrugged, his eyes void of the connection we once shared. Jenna, she's my mother. What do you expect me to do? He uttered, his voice empty of the affection that once comforted me. Realization washed over me like a cold shower. I was alone in this battle. To them, I was merely a means to an end, a dispensable part of their twisted family dynamic. I knew I had to break free. All right, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'll leave. And Ethan, we're done. I want a divorce. The room fell into a tense silence, the gravity of my words settling like dust. Ethan's face registered shock, a fleeting glimpse of the man I once fell in love with, but it quickly faded, replaced by an emotionless mask. Fine, Jenna, what you need to, but don't think you're walking away with anything, he responded, his tone icy. I walked to the door, each step lighter than the last, leaving behind the oppressive weight of this house. Vanessa's voice, laced with malice, trailed after me. Goodbye, Jenna. We'll be just fine without your drama. I didn't glance back. Exiting that house marked the end of a painful chapter and the beginning of an uncertain yet liberating journey. The cool evening breeze felt like freedom, washing over me with promises of a new beginning. I had no clear plan for what lay ahead, but I was certain of one thing. I would never allow myself to be diminished or disrespected again. This was the start of my story, on my own terms. Walking away from Ethan and Vanessa, my mind involuntarily drifted back to the beginnings of our story, contrasting sharply with the bitter end. I first met Ethan at work, where his charm and wit quickly captivated me. Our office romance blossomed into a deep connection, or so I thought. We shared dreams of a future together, dreams that now lay shattered at my feet. Our courtship was a whirlwind of affection and promises. Ethan often spoke of his difficult upbringing, raised solely by Vanessa after his father's departure. I saw a vulnerability in him that resonated with me, as I too had faced my share of hardships. But the Ethan I knew then was not the man I had just left behind. The first warning sign came the day I met Vanessa. Her demeanor was cold, her words sharp. Ethan could do better, she had said, scrutinizing me with a judgmental gaze. Ethan, instead of defending me, chuckled nervously and changed the subject. I brushed it off, attributing it to first meeting nerves. How wrong I was. Our wedding plans were modest, but Ethan's excitement was palpable. He wanted a big celebration, to make up for the lackluster moments of his childhood. I admired his desire to turn past pains into joyful memories. But as the wedding drew closer, our differences became more pronounced. I had risen to a managerial position at work, a fact that Ethan initially celebrated. But soon his support turned to envy. Conversations about my work achievements became strained, and Ethan's demeanor grew cold. He started suggesting I should leave my job to focus on our home life, echoing Vanessa's archaic views on marriage. Then came the ultimatum. You need to choose, Jenna, your career or our family, Ethan said one evening, his tone unyielding. But why can't I have both? Why does it have to be a choice? I responded, bewildered by his demand. Vanessa, who had increasingly become a permanent fixture in our home, chimed in. A woman's place is in the home, Jenna. You're neglecting your duties as a wife. Their words stung like a slap. I realized then that their vision of our future was vastly different from mine. They wanted a version of me that fit their narrow expectations, a version I could never be. The final straw was Ethan's announcement of Vanessa moving in with us permanently. A decision made without my consent, a blatant disregard for our partnership. I felt like a stranger in my own home, my opinions and feelings irrelevant. As these memories flooded back, anger and hurt surged within me. How could I have been so blind? How could I have ignored the glaring signs of Ethan's inability to stand up to Vanessa? I was nothing more than a means to an end for them, a convenient addition to their twisted family dynamic. But no more. The Jenna that walked away from that house was not the same one who entered it. I was stronger now, wiser, and fueled by a desire for retribution. Ethan and Vanessa would soon learn that their actions had consequences they could never have anticipated. I was determined to make them pay for every tear, every moment of self-doubt they had caused me. My journey of revenge had just begun. The days following my departure from Ethan and Vanessa's grip were a blur of emotions. As I navigated my newfound freedom, the memory of Vanessa moving into our home replayed in my mind, marking the beginning of my unraveling. It was a sunny afternoon when Ethan casually mentioned his mother would be staying with us for a while. The news caught me off guard, but I tried to remain understanding. Vanessa had always been a looming presence in our marriage, but living with her was a challenge I hadn't anticipated. From the day she arrived, Vanessa made it clear that she considered the house her domain. This place could use a woman's touch, and clearly, "You're not up to the task, Jenna," she remarked on her first day, eyeing the decor disdainfully. Her criticism wasn't limited to the house. She found fault in everything I did, from my cooking to the way I dressed. "Ethan, how do you tolerate such bland meals?" she would say, scrunching her nose at the dinners I prepared. Ethan, instead of defending me, would nod in agreement, his silence a dagger to my heart. Her extravagant spending was the most egregious. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and lavish parties became the norm. She used the money I earned as though it were hers by right. "A little luxury never hurt anyone, Jenna. You should try it sometime. Maybe then you'd understand," Vanessa sneered one evening, flaunting her new diamond necklace. I tried discussing this with Ethan, but he dismissed my concerns. "Mom's had a tough life, Jenna. She deserves to enjoy herself," he said, ignoring the financial strain her indulgences put on us. The situation reached a boiling point when Vanessa decided to renovate the kitchen without consulting me. "It's just so outdated, Jenna. We need a space more fitting for our lifestyle," she declared, as contractors roamed our home estimating costs. "But this is our home, not just yours. You can't just make these decisions without talking to us." I protested, my frustration boiling over. Vanessa laughed, a cold, harsh sound that echoed in the hollow space that used to be my sanctuary. "Oh, Jenna, when will you learn? This is my son's house, and what I say goes. You're just living here." Ethan's response, or lack thereof, shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. He stood by, a passive observer, as his mother bulldozed over my feelings and our shared life. That night, lying in bed, I realized the full extent of their betrayal. They didn't see me as a partner or even a person. I was just a convenient accessory in their lives, easily discarded and replaced. But I refused to be a victim any longer. As Vanessa's words echoed in my head, a plan began to form. They thought they could control me, use me for their own gain, but they were gravely mistaken. I would take back control, reclaim my life, and in doing so, I would ensure that Vanessa and Ethan felt the sting of their actions, a sting that would leave a lasting mark. My revenge would be meticulous, calculated, and, most importantly, deserved. They had underestimated me for the last time. The weeks that followed were a crescendo of tension and silent battles. Living under the same roof with Ethan and Vanessa, I felt like a stranger in a home that once held the promise of love and companionship. But the true tipping point came unexpectedly, on a day that should have been about celebration, my birthday. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to an empty house. There were no signs of celebration, not even a note. I tried to brush off the disappointment, reminding myself that expecting anything from Ethan and Vanessa was futile. The day dragged on with an eerie quietness until the evening when even Ethan and Vanessa returned, bubbling with excitement. "We have great news. Jenna!" Ethan exclaimed as they barged in, ignoring my evident dejection. Vanessa's eyes sparkled with a malicious glee. "We're going on a trip, a week in the Bahamas. Just think of the sun, the beaches, the luxury." I stood there, dumbfounded. "You're going on a trip? On my birthday? You didn't even remember." Ethan waved off my shock. "Oh, is it today? Well, happy birthday then. But listen, this trip is going to be amazing. Mom and I have been planning it for weeks." Vanessa chimed in. her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Oh, Jenna, don't be so childish. Birthdays are just another day. Besides, you should be happy for us. We deserve this break." Their blatant disregard for me, on what should have been a special day, was the final straw. Anger bubbled inside me, a fiery blend of betrayal and hurt. "You're using my money for this trip, aren't you? The money I work hard for." Ethan shrugged, a dismissive gesture that ignited my fury. "Well, someone has to pay for it, and since you're the only one working—" Vanessa laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "Honestly, Jenna, you should be grateful. We're spending your money on something worthwhile. It's not like you have any better use for it." Their words hit me like a physical blow. The audacity to use my hard-earned money for their frivolous pleasures while disregarding my feelings was appalling. I realized then that I was nothing more than a financial resource to them, a means to fund their lavish desires. "I can't believe this. You two are unbelievable," I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "Calm down, Jenna. It's just money, and it's not like you're doing anything important with it," Ethan said, his tone patronizing. Vanessa smirked, adding insult to injury. "Exactly. Be a good wife and support your husband and his mother. That's your role, after all." Their words echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of how little they valued me. But their smug faces, their condescending tones ignited something within me. A resolve, a burning desire for retribution. "This is it. I'm done. I refuse to be your personal ATM, your doormat." "You'll regret treating me this way," I vowed, my voice steady with newfound determination. Ethan and Vanessa exchanged amused glances, clearly underestimating the depth of my resolve. But I knew, at that moment, that my journey of revenge had truly begun. They had pushed me to my limits, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. In the days following my decision, I moved into a modest hotel, a temporary sanctuary as I plotted my next steps. The betrayal by Ethan and Vanessa had left a bitter taste, but it also fueled a fire within me, a desire to reclaim my life and exact revenge. I began by consulting a lawyer, meticulously laying out the years of financial exploitation and emotional abuse. The lawyer listened intently, occasionally nodding, his expression a mix of disbelief and sympathy. "We have a strong case here, Jenna. It's clear that you've been taken advantage of. Let's start with filing for divorce and freezing the joint accounts," he suggested. With each step, I felt a piece of my old self return, the Jenna who was confident, who wouldn't let anyone walk over her. I was no longer the woman who tolerated disrespect and manipulation. A few weeks into my hotel stay, my phone rang. It was Ethan, his voice laced with panic. "Jenna, where are you? The bank accounts are frozen, and we can't access any funds." I couldn't help but smile, a cold, satisfying grin. "Oh, Ethan, I'm taking back what's mine. You and your mother can't use me as your personal cash machine anymore." There was a pause, and then Ethan's voice grew desperate. "Jenna, please, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. We're a family, after all." Family. The word echoed mockingly in my ears. "No, Ethan, we were never a family. You chose your mother over your wife, and now you must face the consequences." As I ended the call, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was just the beginning. Vanessa and Ethan had underestimated me for far too long. They thought they could control and use me, but I was about to show them just how wrong they were. The next phase of my plan involved exposing their true characters. I reached out to mutual friends and colleagues, sharing my story. The reactions were a mix of shock and support. "I always knew Vanessa was difficult, but I had no idea it was this bad," a former colleague said, her voice filled with indignation. Word spread, and soon Ethan and Vanessa's social standing began to crumble. Invitations dwindled, and their once bustling social life faltered. I watched from the sidelines, a bittersweet satisfaction in seeing them isolated, a taste of their own medicine. But the true revenge was yet to come. I had one last card to play, one that would ensure Ethan and Vanessa would never forget the price of their actions. The final move was a legal stroke of genius. Through my lawyer, I initiated a case to claim back the funds Vanessa had squandered. The evidence was overwhelming, and the law was on my side. The day we received the court's decision in my favor was the day I truly felt vindicated. Ethan's pleas for forgiveness and Vanessa's attempts to negotiate fell on deaf ears. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. The financial strain was just a start. I wanted them to feel the same helplessness and despair they had subjected me to. As I prepared to leave the hotel and start anew, I knew that the path ahead would be challenging. But I also knew that I was no longer the same woman who walked into this situation. I was stronger, wiser, and most importantly, free. The day of reckoning had arrived. After weeks of meticulous planning and legal maneuvering, I was ready to confront Ethan and Vanessa directly. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of discussing the divorce and settlement. As I entered the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw them sitting there, a picture of anxiety. Vanessa's face, usually so composed, was etched with worry. Ethan looked up as I approached, his eyes searching for a sign of leniency. "Jenna, thank you for agreeing to meet," Ethan started, his voice unsteady. "Look, I know things got out of hand, but we're family. Can't we just put this behind us and start over?" I couldn't help but scoff at his audacity. "Start over? After everything you and your mother have done? You must be joking." Vanessa interjected, her tone a mix of desperation and cunning. "Jenna, dear, let's be reasonable. We all made mistakes, but we can work this out. We're willing to make amends." Their pleas were a stark contrast to their earlier arrogance. It was satisfying to see them squirm, to witness the shift in power. "Mistakes? You call years of manipulation and financial abuse a mistake?" I retorted, my voice firm. "You two have shown no remorse for your actions. Now, you will face the consequences." Ethan's face paled, a realization dawning on him. "Jenna, please, we need the money, the lifestyle, the reputation. We can't lose everything." Vanessa, ever the manipulator, tried a different approach. "Think about what's best for all of us, Jenna. We can still be a family. Isn't that worth more than revenge?" But their words fell on deaf ears. I had seen their true colors, and there was no going back. "This is no longer about money or reputation," I said, my resolve unwavering. "It's about justice. You will both pay for what you've done. The court has ruled in my favor, and you will comply with its decision." The look of defeat on their faces was the vindication I had sought for so long. I stood up, ready to leave the past behind. "This is where our paths diverge, Ethan and Vanessa. I hope the lessons you learn from this are profound and lasting. Goodbye." As I walked away, I didn't look back. I had turned the tables on them, reclaimed my dignity and independence. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. Ethan and Vanessa were now just a part of my past, a painful chapter that had come to a close. In the aftermath of my final encounter with Ethan and Vanessa, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The chapter of my life dominated by their deceit and manipulation was closed, but the journey ahead was mine to chart. The taste of victory was sweet, yet it bore the complexity of hard-earned lessons. I had moved into a new apartment, a space that was entirely my own. The walls were yet to be decorated, the rooms still echoed with the newness, but it was a sanctuary of peace and freedom. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. Word of Ethan and Vanessa's downfall spread quickly. Their once prestigious social circle had crumbled, leaving them isolated and disgraced. The lavish lifestyle they had so greedily pursued was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of their actions. But the true reward of my journey was not in their downfall. It was in the reclaiming of my identity and the rebuilding of my life. My career, which had once been a point of contention in our marriage, flourished. I was promoted, recognized for my resilience and dedication. Colleagues who had heard of my ordeal expressed admiration and support, further fueling my drive to succeed. I often found myself reflecting on the journey. The pain and betrayal had been real, but so was the strength I discovered within myself. I had faced my fears, stood up against injustice, and emerged victorious. The final twist of fate came unexpectedly one day. As I sipped coffee in a cafe, the same one where I had last seen Ethan and Vanessa, I overheard a conversation at the next table. It was about them. They were struggling, facing legal battles and financial ruin. Vanessa, once so proud and haughty, was now a shadow of her former self, humbled by the consequences of her greed and manipulation. As I listened, I felt no joy in their suffering. Instead, I felt a sense of closure. My revenge had been served, justice had been meted out, but I no longer dwelled in the past. They were a chapter closed, a lesson learned. I finished my coffee and stepped out into the sunlight, feeling its warmth on my face. The world around me seemed brighter, filled with possibilities. I had survived the storm and was now basking in the calm that followed. As I walked down the street, I realized that my story was not defined by Ethan and Vanessa, nor by the pain they had caused. My story was about resilience, about rising from the ashes and forging a path of my own. I smiled, embracing the future with open arms. The road ahead was mine to travel, filled with hope, opportunities, and the promise of new beginnings.
Why is the money we sent to Mom only $670? My husband shouts angrily. I had to stop sending more money. Look at what's left in your mom's account on this paper, I reply straightforwardly. My name is Penelope and I'm 42 years old. I work part-time at a supermarket. I have 2 sons, Ethan in 8th grade and Leo in 6th grade. My husband is Asher, who's 43 years old. Asher's mom, my mother-in-law, is 67 years old. Ever since Asher's dad passed away, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Even though she gets some money from a pension, it's not much. When my father-in-law died, we talked about it. He raised Asher, and I feel indebted to him. I figure he'll need more help in the future too. So I've decided to send her $335 every month as a sort of caregiving payment, I explain. They told us the house loan is paid off now. My late father-in-law left behind $200,000. As per his will, Asher, being his only child, agreed to give the entire amount to my mother-in-law. I thought maybe we could manage with that money. It's scary living without any income and seeing your savings shrink. My mother-in-law understands this too, so she suggested I give her a monthly allowance. It's more of a symbolic gesture, I add. But less than a year after we made that decision, my mother-in-law called in tears, sparking an argument about the allowance because of COVID. I can't afford to go to the cheaper supermarket, so I can't save any money, she says. COVID can be scary for some people, my husband acknowledges. Yeah, it's scary to go out. I agree. So if there's something you need, just tell me. I can pick it up from the specific store on my way home from work, I offer. But my mother-in-law insists that's not the problem. It's not just groceries, it's everyday items too. Oh, I understand now. It's not only food. Okay, I'll go to that store for everyday items as well. I promise. Honestly, do I have to spell it out for you? It's not just groceries and everyday items. It's things like hair dye to cover gray hair too, she shouts. In other words, she's saying, please don't make me explain so much. The allowance isn't enough. My husband, feeling guilty, says, I'm sorry, Mother, and decides to increase it to $670 without asking me first. Wow, $670 is a lot of money. I couldn't hide my surprise at the decision made without asking me first. That's like all the money I earn from my part-time job. And soon, our older child will be taking entrance exams, and we can't skip sending them to cram school. I asked the store manager for more hours, but it's been hard to balance work and home. Mom, you're never home at night, my younger child complained. I'm sorry, sweetie. Mommy is working hard to earn money for us, I said, feeling guilty. Today, I made a really cool piggy bank at school and got praise for it. But I can't even talk about it now, he banged on the table. I'm sorry. I'll buy you the toy you wanted for your birthday. I promise I'll work hard for it, I reassured him, promising to buy the toy my second son wanted. Then my husband walked by, just wait a bit for the toy. Grandma is making sacrifices too. Mommy isn't working just for toys, she's working for Grandma, he said before leaving me feeling guilty. Even for our child's birthday gift, we were cutting back for my mother-in-law's sake. And the way he said it made me wonder, who was I really working for? My husband's words left me confused. Surprisingly, our younger child stayed and patted my shoulder. Mom, you're doing your best. Don't worry, Mom. I don't need the toy right away, my younger child reassures me. But that feeling of uncertainty returned when my mother-in-law called. Did you get the envelope? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, I replied. You can probably guess what happened next. Indeed, today I received an envelope from my mother-in-law. When I opened it, I found a copy of a bank statement inside. I quickly checked the remaining balance. I was surprised and my voice slipped out unintentionally. $6. It's less than $10 now. Can you see it? My mother-in-law seemed to understand that I had seen the contents of the envelope and her voice quivered with tears. And now, with prices going up, I can't even afford to pay the electricity and gas bills, she sobbed. But I tried to keep talking while looking at the statement. That's enough. All you do is tell me what to do and what not to do, going on about useless things and procrastinating. Last time, you talked about running errands for household items and groceries, but those were useless solutions. That's why I called at this hour. Asher, are you there? Take over for me. My husband had already come close during the phone conversation, and he said, Mom, let me take over, as he took the receiver from me. Yeah, Asher responded. Then he exclaimed, oh no, letting her use up the entire inheritance, letting the balance drop below $10. I'm sorry, I think this is definitely a misfortune for my humble parents. Yeah, I understand. So starting from next month, if I send $2,000 each month, will that be okay? He blurted out suddenly. What? $2,000? How could the allowance be that much? I stood there in shock as I listened. After he hung up the phone, Asher shouted angrily. Why is the allowance for Mom only $670? I told you it should be at least $670. I thought you had increased it. But you see, inside that envelope? I tried to explain, but he interrupted me and continued. I told you I owe her for raising me. In the future, she'll probably need more help. If you think of it as caregiving expenses, why is my mother in such a heartbreaking situation? His voice grew louder as he expressed his frustration. I was already stretched to my limit. Even the $335 allowance was tough to manage. I thought increasing it to $670 was an achievement. I worked more hours at my part-time job to cope. I even learned to cook more affordable meals. I managed the household expenses with all those efforts, but it wasn't enough, and there were sacrifices. I did it for my children just like I do everything else. She scolded me abruptly, deciding on a $2,000 allowance without consulting me and without even considering how our allowances were being used according to my mother-in-law's bank statement. Above all, I'm working for the sake of my sons, not for my mother-in-law. That's enough, I said in a cold voice. I realize that when a person gets too angry, their voice becomes quiet. What do you mean, it's fine? Are you getting defensive now? My husband mocked me. I was no longer willing to yield to his words. After seeing a copy of that statement, I absolutely couldn't accept such a ridiculous proposal as a $2,000 allowance. I've had enough of a son who blindly believes and supports a money-seeking mother and grandmother. People who can't prioritize our family don't belong here. Get out. If you want to support your mother so badly, then go live with her. You can happily go to hell together. I firmly pushed my husband out the front door, then I walked him out. I shoved the envelope in his face. I'll send your belongings back and you'll cover the shipping. Take a close look at the contents of your mother's bank statement, huh? My husband asked, but I just closed the door with a laugh. Bang. What's going on, Mom? Hearing the commotion, our two children came downstairs. Well, you two. Your father said he wants to spend more money on you, and he asked Grandma to spend more too. I couldn't stand it any longer, so I explained to the children. I see. If you decided this, Mom, it must be for the best for this house, my older child said. I'll follow your lead, they added. Well, that toy. I'll wait for it until I'm an adult, no matter how many years it takes, my younger son said, trying to cheer me up. Thank you, my sons. 1 week later, my husband called out to me, help me. I responded coldly, what about? Could you at least listen to my story? He pleaded. I know what you meant when you said to look at the statement. I can't believe after all this time that I know what that means, he stammered, but he kept talking, clinging to his speech. I had to hold back my laughter on the phone. I can't believe that you would blindly trust your mother and then suggest such an outrageous proposal. I can't believe you're calling me now, wanting to get back together. You really have no idea how clueless you are, huh? That's just who you are. You question everything without realizing your own indecisiveness. You casually involve others and act surprised when it's pointed out, I said. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have one final conversation. I want to say those last words in person. It's important for the children and closure matters. I agreed to meet my husband in our house. Oh, and make sure to bring all of your mother's credit card statements, okay? I instructed. My husband and mother-in-law arrived, their lives undoubtedly in disarray. I thought this meeting would be a complete disaster. If you had just calmed down and looked at the statement, you would have figured it out. My husband insulted me outright. You ended up believing your mother, didn't you? I responded calmly. So, can you show me the statement? My husband placed the statement on the table with trembling hands, and as I looked at it, I asked, "What did you discover?" And then my mom, she used the money I sent her for electricity, gas, food. It wasn't just for living expenses, he confessed in a barely audible voice. It wasn't just for living expenses, was it? Actually, the other purpose was the main one, right? Please say it with your own mouth, I urged. She was a member of an escort club. I'll let my husband tell you himself, his withered confession accompanied by my mother-in-law's trembling lips. I was absolutely delighted, and I couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Your mother, whom you believe more than me, was a woman who spent money on male escorts while lying about not being able to pay the increased electricity and gas bills and came begging to her own son. I exclaimed with glee. The statement showed transactions at an escort club named Romeo, followed by expenses at high-end restaurants and bars. She was spending over $40,000 a month. After a good laugh, I took a sip of cold water to calm down, then continued speaking. Even at nearly 70 years old, how could she pick up a young, handsome guy at an escort club and take him to all those fancy places? I don't understand how she ended up in such a situation, begging for money at her own son's house. I'm really curious if she ended up addicted or something like that, I remarked, poking at her wounded pride. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law spoke up, saying, "He told me he feels love for the princess who gives him an allowance. He even gives me presents." This made me spit out the water I had been drinking in surprise. I couldn't help but giggle and laugh. Referring to a 67-year-old as a princess is quite something, isn't it? Well, some people fall for words easily, like my mother-in-law becoming like a man's personal ATM. So they'll keep saying those words, won't they? I took another sip of water. If you're giving an escort guy an allowance, you must be withdrawing a considerable amount, right? It wasn't my mother-in-law who visibly shuddered, huh? The one who reacted was actually my husband. I placed a piece of paper on the table. It was fun meeting you today. I love you. Please request me again. Read the business card with a handwritten message. Huh? My husband stared at the business card on the table. I didn't expect to be kicked out of the house all of a sudden. I didn't even tidy up my own room, did I? He stammered. I found your stuff while I was cleaning up your things, even the strange money deductions. It all makes sense now. Yes, that's right. So it's not just my fault, my mother-in-law shouted hoarsely. There was a glass of lemonade in front of her, but she hadn't touched it at all. It might be expected, since she had been continuously blamed. However, as the target of blame shifted, she attempted an unexpected turnaround. My husband's voice trembled as he reacted to this blow. But because I've been laughed at this much, am I the only one being ridiculous? Isn't that so unfair? My husband retorted. Huh? No, just wait a minute. You're making me spend this much money, and now you're saying this. That's my line. Asking for money because your allowance isn't enough. I can't believe you're into escort girls too. Like parent, like child, must be an annoying way to spend money. It's over now, isn't it? Both of you are done. At my words, both my husband and mother-in-law had no words left. Hey kids, come down here for a sec. I called up to the second floor. The two kids came down. I need to talk to you about something serious. Mom and I have decided it's best if we split up because Dad and Grandma have been using a lot of money selfishly. I explained honestly. Dad has been giving money to another woman, and Grandma has been spending a lot on a younger man. They're asking for even more. My husband tried to stop me from saying it in front of the kids, but I felt they needed to know the truth. The older child spoke up, agreeing that Dad shouldn't hide things. They pointed out how Dad said there wasn't enough money for toys while spending it on other people. The younger one added that their older sibling probably needed money for tutoring. That's right. I want to save money for your future, not spend it on strangers, I said firmly. Hearing this, the older child said, then it's goodbye from us too. The younger one agreed, saying they could manage without toys. They both thought it was wrong for Dad to spend money on someone else instead of us. In the end, it was clear that I had to cut ties with both my husband and my mother-in-law. Because of my divorce from my husband and mother-in-law's extravagant spending, I received a significant amount of alimony. Sadly, they continued their reckless habits, and I could see the consequences coming. Eventually, they hit rock bottom, accumulating debts so severe that they had to give up their house. Despite having to pay alimony and child support, they seemed unable to manage their finances wisely. I refused to give them any leeway. They need to fulfill their obligations entirely. I've taken up part-time work to support us. Although we can't afford many luxuries, the three of us are making ends meet decently. It's not extravagant, but I'm determined to do everything I can for my children. My hope is to continue living peacefully with the three of us in the future. I thought Mom had lots of money saved, but turns out she didn't. I told you, right? I think we should make her leave. Why keep someone who doesn't have a job here? I've been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife used up all my money. They treated me like I was just here to clean up after them. I got tired of it all, so I left quietly. Then my son called me, sounding really worried. Mom, what's happening? Tommy asked urgently on the phone. Right around that time, something I did became big news all over the United States. My name is Sarah, and I'm 70 years old. I lived in France for a while, but then I got sick and had to come back to the United States. My old apartment was gone, so I asked my son Tommy and his wife if I could stay with them for a bit. Tommy is my only son, and he's 44 years old, working in an office. He and his wife Alice don't have any kids, and they seem to live quietly. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reconnect, and Tommy seemed happy to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a bit. Tommy reluctantly said yes. It felt awkward to ask, but the joy of being with my family again made me brave. Feeling a bit nervous but mostly happy, I took a taxi from the airport to their house. When I got there, Tony and Alice greeted me at the door. Tommy seemed glad to see me, but Alice didn't look happy at all. I'm planning to stay here for a few months. My stuff will arrive later, I told them. I left my small bag and went to the living room. We talked about our lives, jobs, and my time in France. When Tommy asked why I moved to France, I just said, I'm getting old and wanted to enjoy living in the countryside there. Tommy chuckled, but Alice still seemed unhappy. Then we talked about my health issues. I've been feeling really dizzy and the doctors think it might be Meniere's disease. When it happens, everything seems to spin around me and I feel sick. I don't feel safe living alone, so I wanted to stay with them until I feel better. After our chat, I went back to the entrance to grab my things from my bag. As I was sorting out my stuff in the hallway, I heard Tony and Alice talking. Tommy, are you really okay with Mom staying here? I don't want to live with an old lady, Alice said. She's my mom, come on. Plus, you work part-time, so it's not like you'll always be here, Tony replied. Yeah, but what about her days off? How long is she going to stay? I want her gone, Alice insisted. Don't say that. Mom will leave eventually. Let's talk about money tomorrow. Just keep your voice down. She might hear you, Tony warned. She can't hear us. She's old. They say old age brings sharp ears for insults, Alice remarked. And there I was, listening to their talk in the chilly hallway. I feel bad for suddenly intruding on Tony and Alice's lives. I'm sure it's a big hassle for them. But I'm really happy to be spending time with them after all these years apart. When Tony was young, I raised him alone after my husband passed away. We didn't have much, and Tony faced his own struggles with sickness and all. This doesn't make up for that, but I wanted to come here to share my apologies and gratitude. That's why I came to this house. It's a shame I'm not welcomed, but they have their own lives to lead. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to calm my anxious heart. The next morning, Tony left for work, leaving just Alice and me. While I was doing some crafting in the living room, Alice came up to me. Hey Sarah, can you not make such a mess? I glanced around and saw fabric bits and threads everywhere. Oh sorry, I'll tidy up. Do you know what this is? I showed her the little pouch I was sewing with a cute turtle design. This is a turtle pouch. I love turtles, so I make crafts with them. It even has a zipper on its shell, I explained. That's nice, but Sarah, you can't just hang around here all day. Alice interrupted, clearly uninterested. At least go somewhere else when I'm not working. You're getting in the way. But I get dizzy if I go out too much, I said. I'll drag you to the community center nearby. You can stay there during the day. I have things to do at home, Alice said firmly, without room for discussion. And also help with the chores while you're here. You're not just here to relax. It's the least you can do since we're letting you stay, she added, leaving me surprised. So I finally said, okay, and got up slowly. From then on, I found myself doing all the housework, even though I felt dizzy and achy. I took on the chores that Alice and Tommy seemed to expect me to do, almost like I was their housekeeper. I noticed that Alice was always glued to her phone, maybe neglecting the housework before I arrived. That evening, when Tommy came home, he approached me with a smile and asked, "Mom, did you bring your bank card?" I looked at him over my reading glasses, nodded, and got up. I took out my bank card from the little pouch I made and handed it to Tommy. He quickly checked it, and his expression changed. "Wait, Mom, is this all the money you have saved? Do you have any other accounts?" he asked, his face tightening. "That's all I have. I don't need much at my age, and I don't have any health problems," I said, smiling. But as the conversation went on, Tommy's expression grew darker. "Wow, this isn't much money at all, not even $10,000. You said you were living well abroad, so I assumed." Tommy kept questioning me, asking if I had more money hidden away. When I said no, he sighed and seemed disappointed. "Fine, I'll keep hold of this card for now. I'm doing you a favor by letting you stay here, so this is the least you can do." After Tony got my account details, he took my bank and debit cards and left the room. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear Tony sighing loudly through the wall that separated our rooms. Oh, what a disappointment. I thought Mom had a lot of money, but it turns out our finances are in bad shape because of her. I shouldn't have agreed to let her stay. We should kick her out. She's not bringing us any benefits, Tony complained. It seemed like both of them were pretty sure of themselves. They talked openly in the next room, almost as if they wanted me to hear. In my cold bed, I held back tears of loneliness and sadness. The next day, since Alice had the day off, she drove me to the local community center. I opened my bag to continue my crafting in the lounge area, but realized I had forgotten the fabric I needed at home. I hesitated but couldn't bring myself to ask Alice to go back and get it. Luckily, I wasn't feeling too dizzy that day. I knew the area, so I decided to take a walk back home to get the fabric. When I finally reached home, I peeked through the window and saw Alice with a man I didn't recognize. At first, I thought he might be a guest, but they seemed really close. I hesitated outside for a moment, then decided not to go in. It dawned on me that maybe they wanted me out so I wouldn't interrupt their affair. Back at the community center, I couldn't stop thinking about Alice and the man. I decided to call someone for advice. From then on, I avoided mentioning the situation and continued interacting with Tony and his wife. But whenever I left the house, I made sure to leave a red turtle pouch on the living room side table, just to let them know I was aware of what was going on. 3 months went by like this. I had been staying with Tony's family for a while now, essentially becoming their household maid. Whenever I was at home, I had to do endless chores. And when Alice was around, I was sent off to the community center. Most of my savings had been drained by Tommy, who had a gambling addiction and spent a lot of his time on lotteries and slot machines. His obsession with money seemed to stem from the financial struggles he faced as a child. I tried to talk to him about it at first, but it always made him angry. After 3 months of this, I couldn't take it anymore. One night before a long weekend, I decided to do something I had been thinking about. "Tommy, Alice, I want to thank you for letting me stay with you. Tommy, I know things were tough for you when you were young because we didn't have much money. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, but I'm grateful." I took out a homemade turtle pouch from the table. It was green with a zipper on the shell. "This is a token of my appreciation for both of you. I hope you'll accept it." To my surprise, neither Tony nor Alice showed any interest in my handmade gift. "Mom, that's enough. Are we really out of money? Can't you think of some French account or something?" Tony said, "I've told you, we're out of money. Look, I put a lot of effort into making this. Can't you just accept it as a symbol of my love? Remember how happy you used to be when I would fill the shell with candy and a little pocket money?" Tommy started getting more and more irritated. "I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want something like this." "Sarah, how much longer do you plan on depending on us? It's getting annoying," Tommy continued. Both Tony and his wife gave me a cold look. Desperate, I tried to remind Tommy, "Do you remember Joe? He helped us out in our old apartment." "What? I don't remember. Stop bringing up old stories. Are we done?" Shocked into silence, I held onto the turtle pouch tightly, feeling the texture of the paper inside. The next day, Tony and his wife went on vacation, leaving me behind. After our conversation the night before, I had decided it was time for me to leave as well. So I quickly packed my bag with the help of a arranged carrier and sent it off to my home in France. I made sure to include the red turtle pouch in my carry-on bag. Before leaving, I left a simple note on the table thanking them and saying goodbye, and then I left the house where I had been staying for 3 months. Instead of going straight home to France, I stayed in a hotel in the US for a while. I had things to take care of, and I figured Tony and his wife would contact me eventually. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Tony called me. "Mom, what's going on?" "That turtle pouch, it's yours, right?" I could hear Tony's frustration over the phone. "Ah, you noticed." I wasn't surprised when I saw the news on TV. Inside the turtle-shaped pouch that I had planned to give to Tony and his wife was a check for $1 million. It was my way of thanking them for all they had done for me and apologizing for any trouble I may have caused them in the past. Some people might think it's shallow to make amends with money, but I had been dreaming of the day when I could give it to them, saving up bit by bit over the course of 40 years. Before meeting Tony after a long time, I did some investigating and discovered that he was in debt. He had tried to pay off his gambling debts by gambling even more, only to find himself in even deeper trouble. Despite having a steady job, he was struggling. All I wanted was for him to clear his debts and leave peacefully, but when I offered to help, they refused to accept my gesture. It seemed like they had completely forgotten about the kindness they had shown to my family and me in the past. So I decided to divide the $1 million check into smaller sums and donate them to charities and welfare organizations across America. I put the donations in the same handmade turtle pouch and sent them anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation, making headlines and trending on social media. On social media, Alice's son commented, "Hey Mom, isn't that the turtle pouch?" "Yeah, mate. So does that mean you were going to give us one filled with money too?" "Yes, exactly. That was my way of saying thank you and I'm sorry. I've been making both the pouch and saving the money to give to you." "Well, you could have told us. We would have accepted it. If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either." Tony's voice was filled with rage as he yelled on the phone, completely losing control. "That money belongs to me. How dare you trick me? Give it back." I couldn't bear to listen any longer, so I pulled the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I spoke up. "Okay, let's calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle pouch left, and if you really want it, it's yours." After some time, Tony finally calmed down and repeated his request for the turtle pouch. We agreed to meet later at a cafe. On the appointed day, I brought the last red turtle pouch in an envelope to our meeting spot. Tony and his wife were already there and immediately demanded the money before I even had a chance to sit down. As I quietly took out the red turtle pouch, Tony grabbed it immediately and unzipped its shell. But inside wasn't a check. It was a small electronic device. "What's this?" Tony asked, puzzled as he examined the device. He found a button and pressed it, and a voice recording started playing. Alice, who was standing next to Tony, went pale as she heard her own voice talking affectionately with another man, someone who clearly wasn't Tommy. Confused and shocked, Alice tried to snatch the recording from Tommy's hand, but he held onto it tightly. As they struggled, I opened the envelope I had brought and laid out several photos on the table. Pictures of Alice having an affair with another man in their home. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Alice became flustered and kept asking why. Tommy picked up each photo, studying them carefully. "Ever since I came to your house, something didn't feel right. A friend suggested I hire someone to investigate, and they even offered to cover the costs. What's wrong with you? Why would you do this?" Alice demanded. "You're my son's wife. It's heartbreaking to think that family would deceive each other. You'll understand when you're older. I suppose fate brought me here to uncover your infidelity." "Have you been lying to me all this time? Since when, Tommy?" Tony remained silent, and now it was Alice's turn to speak. "And what about you wasting all our money on gambling? I only spend what I earn, and you have your part-time jobs, so you should have some money saved up too." Listening to their argument, it became clear that this couple had been keeping their financial struggles hidden until now. Neither of them had any money left. "Alice, you were $40,000 in debt. You've been giving all your earnings to your affair partner. I had the investigator check your finances. Both Tony and Alice were shocked, and they started shouting at each other. I was stunned when I heard the results of the investigation. This couple was on the verge of bankruptcy. Look, if we get Mom's money, we can pay back the debt. So give it to us now. I donated all the money. The only thing left is this red turtle figurine. He wasted my savings on gambling. What? You're kidding me. All of it. In a fit of anger, Tony lunged at me across the table. Other customers started to pay attention, and the staff rushed over. The $1 million is mine. It was supposed to be mine. Give it back. Tony's rage escalated to the point where the police had to be called to restrain him. After some intervention from the officers, they kindly escorted me back to my hotel due to concerns about Tony's aggressive behavior. A week later, Tony and Alice's relationship had completely broken down due to the affair and financial troubles. They ended up getting divorced. Tony, now single, became even more engrossed in gambling, accumulating more debt. He was caught attempting to embezzle company funds, which led to him being fired. His outburst at the cafe was captured on video and spread on social media, making it hard for him to find another job. Unable to bear the shame, Tony cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Alice had nobody to turn to and moved into a rundown public housing unit, living alone. Just as I was about to make a donation for turtle rescue, an online post I made joking about my own turtle went viral. Alice began facing harassment and stalking, which eventually affected her part-time job and resulted in her being fired. Even the man she was having an affair with grew tired of her and left. Now, with no source of income, she relies on temporary assistance for needy families to survive. After returning to my home in France and finishing unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress with ease. As I reviewed some work documents, I heard a noise at the entrance. It seemed Joe, my roommate, had returned home. "Hey, Madam President, welcome back. How was your trip to America?" Joe greeted me with a smile as he set down his coat and bags. Joe is 75 years old and was a resident in the same apartment complex where my son Tommy and I lived years ago. During that difficult time, I was struggling with poverty after losing my husband and caring for a young Tony who had asthma. We had no utilities, and with no one to turn to, I felt desperate and considered giving up. It was Joe and his wife, our upstairs neighbors, who saved us. They became our lifelines. Please call me Sarah. I'm back, and look, I brought back many souvenirs. Wow, all my favorites. Thanks, I'll take some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow. Joe examined each of the souvenirs piled up on the table, his face glowing with happiness. After we had gotten back on our feet, Joe and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we ran into each other in the city, and I started helping with a support program for the needy that Joe had founded. By then, Joe's wife had passed away, and we became business and life partners. I've been leading the organization since Joe retired a few years ago. What began as a small initiative between Joe and myself has blossomed into a large-scale international organization over the past 30 years. Currently, our main focus is on supporting single mothers and their children. A few years back, we relocated to France to study their advanced support systems. Although we've gained recognition in France, we're still relatively unknown in America. I'm planning to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend some quality time with Tony and his family before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't make them understand how I felt, but that's their decision to make. Even if it was only for a brief moment, I was grateful to have had the opportunity to spend time together as a family. Now at the age of 70, I refuse to let my age define me. There's still so much I want and need to accomplish. As I straightened my back in my dress, I began to ponder the content of my upcoming international speech for tomorrow. Everyone was really excited as my daughter Marissa's wedding rehearsal dinner got going. I felt proud watching her and her fiancé Kevin, surrounded by our family and friends, getting lots of good wishes. But then something unexpected happened. Marissa spoke up, asking for everyone's attention. The room went quiet. My husband Ron and I looked at each other, confused. Marissa raised her glass. "I want to talk about something important," she said, looking right at me. "Elise, you might think of yourself as my stepmother, but to me, you're just someone I don't want in my life." The guests were shocked, and Ron looked really pale. I felt like I'd been hit hard, like all the air had been knocked out of me by what Marissa said. What's going on, Marissa? Ron asked, sounding shaky and shocked. Don't act like you don't know, Dad, Marissa said with a sneer. You know that Elise has been trying to become a part of our family since the beginning. Well, I'm done pretending she's not my mom because she never will be. Her words felt like a sharp knife stabbing into me. I looked at Marissa, hoping to see the loving girl I once knew, but all I saw was hatred. Marissa, please, let's not do this now, I begged, my voice shaking with emotion. Why not? She snapped back. This is my day, and I'll say whatever I want. Ron clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. That's enough, he said firmly. We're leaving. Marissa just smirked and turned away, leaving me to face the stares and whispers from the guests. As we walked out, I could feel their judgmental eyes on me, wondering what I'd done to make my own stepdaughter hate me so much. Tears streamed down my face, and I realized everything had changed. In the car, Ron held the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, his face filled with anger and sadness. I don't understand what's wrong with her, Elise, he said, his voice strained. But I won't let her hurt you like this. I just nodded, feeling overwhelmed as we drove away from what should have been a happy night, now ruined. I wondered what had happened to the sweet girl Marissa used to be and what this meant for our family. It's hard to say when Marissa started hating me. Maybe it was when I married her dad and became her stepmom. Or maybe it started even earlier, influenced by her mom, Clara. Don't worry, honey, Clara had told Marissa, running her fingers through her hair. No one can take your real mom's place. Even then, Clara's words made me feel uneasy, but I tried to ignore it. I wanted to build a good relationship with Marissa, my new stepdaughter. I'm not here to take anyone's place, I told Marissa gently. I just want us to be friends. She nodded, but her eyes showed no warmth or love. It felt like there was a barrier between us, fueled by her mom's hurtful words. At first, Marissa was polite, but distant. But as time went on, her true feelings came out. Why are you always trying to get involved in my life? She snapped one evening when I asked about her weekend plans. Ron gave Marissa a disapproving look. Marissa, don't talk to your mom like that. She's not my mom. Marissa yelled, her face full of anger. And I'm tired of her pretending she is. Then she stormed off, leaving me hurt by her harsh words. Ron could only shake his head, looking disappointed and resigned. After that, Marissa's dislike for me was obvious. She'd roll her eyes when I came into a room and make mean comments quietly. If I offered help, she'd reject it rudely, like she couldn't stand being around me. You're not fooling anyone with your fake kindness, she sneered one day when I asked if she wanted a ride to her friend's house. Marissa, stop it, Ron said, getting frustrated. But she didn't listen. It was clear Clara encouraged Marissa's hatred toward me. Whenever we saw her, she'd smile sweetly, like she was happy we didn't get along. I don't know what you've done to make my daughter hate you, she'd say with a fake smile, her eyes filled with mean intentions. But I guess you'll have to deal with the consequences. And deal with them I did. Marissa's hatred kept growing, like a wound that wouldn't heal, making our family life miserable every day. But I didn't realize then that her hurtful behavior was just the beginning of something much worse. Marissa became even more manipulative and mean after she quit college. Without a plan for her future, she seemed determined to cause trouble in our lives, using her anger to get money and create chaos in our family. Give me $5,000, or I'll tell everyone how terrible you've been as a stepmom, she said one day, trapping me in the kitchen. I was shocked. Marissa, why are you saying this? I've tried my best to be good to you. Forget it, she snapped. Just give me the money, and I'll leave you alone. I felt desperate as I realized how low she was willing to go. I don't have that much money right now. Then you better find it unless you want everyone to know how bad you are. After that, it happened often. Marissa kept asking for more money, and her threats got worse each time I said no. Ron was stuck in the middle, trying to make both of us happy and wondering why his daughter was acting like this. Please just give her what she wants, he pleaded with me one night after another big fight. I can't handle all this arguing. But I knew that giving in would only make things worse. So even as Marissa's threats got scarier, I stuck to my decision. You think you're so perfect with your job at the high school, she sneered. Just wait until everyone sees who you really are. Her words scared me. I could only imagine the terrible lies she might spread, ruining my reputation with my coworkers and the students I cared for. Through everything, Clara was always there, silently supporting her daughter's mean actions. "You get what you give, Elise," she'd say when she visited, making me feel even worse. "Maybe if you were a better stepmom, Marissa wouldn't act like this." Her words hurt so much, making me feel angry, betrayed, and lost. But in the middle of all this chaos, I started to feel determined. I couldn't just sit back and let Marissa and Clara keep hurting us. If Marissa wanted a fight, she'd get one. It was time to stand up for myself and my family. I needed to show everyone the truth about Marissa's cruelty, even if it meant doing things I never thought I could do. From then on, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to keep my family safe, even if it meant doing things I never thought I'd have to do. As Marissa's wedding day got closer, she kept asking for more and treating me worse. It felt like she enjoyed making me suffer, testing how much I could take before I broke down. "I need $3,000 more for my dress alterations," she said one evening, not even saying hello as she came into the living room. Ron looked at me, begging me to give in, but I couldn't take it anymore. "No, Marissa, I've had enough." She acted surprised. "What are you going to do, Elise? Cry to Daddy like you always do." I clenched my fists, feeling furious. "You ungrateful child. Your dad and I have done everything for you, and this is how you treat us." Marissa laughed, making me even angrier. "You're not fooling anyone. You're just a sad, insecure woman trying to buy your way into our family." Her words hurt, but before I could say anything, she said one more thing. "You think the school wants someone like you?" Marissa said, her voice dripping with malice. "Just wait until they find out about your drinking problem." I felt sick to my stomach. Marissa was planning to ruin my career and reputation with lies. "Marissa, stop it," Ron yelled, furious, but she just smirked, enjoying the mess she'd made. In that moment, something changed in me. I felt determined to stay strong against all the hurt and anger. "I'm done being a victim," I said, my voice firm and steady. "Leave and don't come back until you can act like a decent person." Marissa looked surprised by my defiance at first, but then she smirked and leaned in close. "You'll regret this," she whispered, her breath hot on my face. With those words, she stormed out, leaving a tense silence behind her. Ron looked at me, seeming lost. "I'm sorry, Elise. I don't know what's wrong with her," he said, rubbing his temples. But I knew this wasn't sudden. It was years of Clara's influence. As I thought about Marissa's threats, I felt determined. She thought she could ruin my life with lies, but she was wrong. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one, and I wouldn't play by her rules. Marissa's threats kept replaying in my head, making me more determined to expose her true self before it was too late. I knew I couldn't rely on Ron for help. His love for his daughter made him blind to her cruelty. So I had to handle this on my own. That's when Derek came into the picture. He used to be Marissa's boyfriend before she changed. We ran into each other at the grocery store, and we started talking. Soon, everything started to make sense. "She's not who you think she is," Derek told me, looking regretful. "She lied to me about you and Ron." I felt really scared when he told me about all the bad things Marissa did. He said Marissa made up stories about me, saying I was trying to control their family and that Ron was mean to them. He believed her because she seemed so sure and angry. But he only realized she was lying after we broke up. As he talked, I started to see how sneaky Marissa really was. She made up lots of lies to make everyone think badly of me. Her mom, Clara, was the one behind it all. Like she was controlling everything behind the scenes. "Derek told me that Marissa's mom has been poisoning Marissa's thoughts about you from the very beginning," I realized, feeling sick to my stomach. "She's been putting all these twisted ideas in her head, like you were trying to replace her mom." Everything suddenly made sense. I had been the target of their mean plan all along, made out to be the bad person in their story. But Derek didn't stop there. He said Marissa's getting married for the wrong reasons. Not because she loves Kevin, but because she wants his money and status. "Marissa doesn't really care about Kevin," Derek said with a laugh. "She's just using him to get what she wants. Once she's got what she needs, she'll leave him and find someone else to use." His words shook me to my core. I had always had a feeling that Marissa didn't truly care, but hearing it so plainly was hard to take. After Derek left, my head was spinning with everything he'd said. I'd been letting Marissa and her mom control everything for too long. But now, armed with the truth, I knew I had to do something. It was time to stand up to them, to show everyone what was really going on. No more pretending to be the victim, no more being scared of their lies. I was ready to fight back. On the day of Marissa's wedding, the air was tense as I watched her get ready. But I was determined. This was the day I would reveal the truth. "You look so pretty, my dear," Clara said sweetly, fixing Marissa's veil with a smile. "Just like a princess on her big day." Marissa glowed with happiness, soaking up her mother's praise like a flower soaking up sunlight. But it made me feel uneasy. "Yes, it's like a fairy tale," I remarked, unable to hold back, "with a handsome prince and a mean stepmother." Clara's eyes narrowed, but Marissa just laughed, not seeming to understand or care about what I meant. "Speaking of mean stepmothers," she said calmly, "I'm surprised you came at all. After how you've been treating me, I thought you might skip the whole thing." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, believe me, I thought about it, but I couldn't miss this moment." Before Marissa could say anything, Ron popped his head into the room with a forced smile. "Everything okay here?" he asked. "Just fine, Dad," Marissa replied sweetly. "Elias and I were just chatting." Her tone dripped with sarcasm, but Ron ignored it. "Well, it's almost time. You ready?" Marissa nodded eagerly, ready to make her entrance. As the music started and the doors opened, I took a deep breath, getting ready for what I had to do. The ceremony went by quickly, with vows that felt empty and fake. But when it came time for Kevin and Marissa to kiss, I knew I had to speak up. "Wait," I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet chapel. "This wedding can't happen." Everyone gasped and looked at me. Marissa's face turned red with anger, her fists clenched. "What's going on?" she spat, furious. I took a deep breath and stared at Marissa firmly. "Marissa, what this means is that I can't stay quiet anymore while you keep lying and manipulating everyone around you." Clara looked pale, realizing what was happening, but I continued before she could interrupt. I showed them all the proof Derek had given me, texts, emails, recordings, that showed Marissa's lies. "For years, you've been spreading lies and turning people against me, pretending to be the innocent one," I said firmly. "But not anymore. It's time for the truth." I showed everyone the evidence, explaining how Marissa had been deceitful and selfish. The chapel fell silent. Marissa's calm facade cracked, and she looked furious and shocked. You're lying," she yelled, reaching out towards me. "How dare you ruin my special day?" But it was too late. The truth was out for everyone to see. As Kevin's family reacted with shock and dismay, it was clear that Marissa's deceit was unraveling before everyone's eyes. She stood exposed, no longer able to maintain her facade. Despite her past actions, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and satisfaction seeing her downfall. The truth had been revealed, and I had won not through trickery, but by exposing the darkness hidden beneath Marissa's lies. The aftermath was chaotic, like a bomb had gone off in the room. The silence was quickly replaced by shouts and gasps as people reacted to the truth. "How could you, Marissa?" someone yelled, their anger palpable. "This was supposed to be my special day." "Your special day was built on lies," I retorted firmly. "You can't deceive people forever." Marissa looked ready to argue, but Kevin stepped forward, his eyes filled with hurt and disbelief. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Were you just using me?" For a moment, there was silence as everyone waited for Marissa's response. I almost felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Almost, but then she put on that fake smile and I saw the cold, calculating look in her eyes. "No, of course not, darling," she said, reaching out to touch Kevin's face. "You know I love you so much. Elias is just trying to cause trouble like she always does." I clenched my fists, trying to control my anger. Didn't she realize that her lies were exposed? Apparently not, as she turned her angry gaze back to me. "This is all your fault," she snapped, pointing accusingly at me. "If you hadn't interfered, none of this would be happening." "Stop," Ron's voice boomed, cutting through the tension. We all turned to see him, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "I can't believe what I'm hearing," he said, shaking his head. "My own daughter lying and manipulating everyone for her own selfish reasons." Marissa was silent, unable to respond. For once, she seemed speechless in the face of her father's disappointment. "I don't even recognize you anymore," Ron said, his voice heavy with sadness. "The girl I raised, the one who was kind and loving, she's gone, isn't she?" A heavy silence filled the room as we all absorbed the weight of Ron's words. It wasn't just Marissa who felt the impact, but Clara too. They exchanged a tense look, a silent struggle passing between them. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "Well?" she demanded, her eyes fixed on her daughter. "Aren't you going to speak up, defend yourself?" But Marissa stayed silent, defeated. She looked smaller than ever, a mere shadow of the manipulative person she had become. Clara snorted in disgust, then stormed out, leaving a shocked silence behind her. Kevin's family followed, their faces showing everything from pity to disgust. And just like that, it was all over. Marissa's big plan had fallen apart, leaving her dreams shattered. As Kevin left, looking devastated, I felt sorry for him. He was just another victim of Marissa's games. But any sympathy I had was quickly replaced by a sense of satisfaction. The truth was out, and Marissa had brought it all on herself. There would be no more lies or manipulation, only the consequences of her actions. In the days after the failed wedding, chaos erupted as news of Marissa's lies spread rapidly. She found herself shunned by the very community she'd once hoped to impress. I'll never forget the sight of her at her mother's door, begging for help after her plans fell apart. "Please, Mom," she cried, tears in her eyes. "I need your help. I have nowhere else to go." But Clara looked at her with a mix of disgust and pity. "Help you?" she scoffed. "After what you've done? After embarrassing our family?" Marissa flinched as if she had been slapped. But you're my mom. You're supposed to support me, no matter what." "Support you?" Clara shook her head sadly. "You don't understand, do you? There's no support left. You've pushed away everyone who cared about you with your selfishness and lies." Her words hit Marissa hard, like a punch to the gut. I could see the realization dawn on her face, the weight of her loneliness settling in. You don't mean that," Marissa whispered, her hand shaking as she reached out. But Clara stepped away, her face now cold and distant. "I don't recognize you anymore," she said firmly. "The daughter I knew wouldn't have done what you did. You made your choices, Marissa. Now you have to face the consequences." With those final words, Clara turned and walked back inside, leaving Marissa alone on the doorstep, utterly broken. In the weeks that followed, I saw Marissa's once proud demeanor crumble under the weight of her own actions. The places she used to frequent, fancy bars and high-end stores, now treated her with scorn, whispers following her wherever she went. Even her friends deserted her, not wanting to be linked with her disgrace. Through it all, Ron and I stayed strong, our bond growing stronger as Marissa's world fell apart. "I'm sorry it had to end like this," Ron said quietly one evening as we watched Marissa walk by, looking defeated. "But you were right. She did this to herself." I didn't say anything, just squeezed his hand gently. Words felt insufficient in the face of such a painful situation. As things settled down and our community began to recover from Marissa's lies, Ron and I received an outpouring of support and gratitude. The families we had helped, the students I had taught, they all came together to thank us for standing up against the manipulation and lies that had threatened to tear us apart. In those moments of connection, witnessing human kindness and resilience, I found a newfound peace and purpose that I had been missing during Marissa's tumultuous reign. She tried to tear me down, but it was her own selfishness that led to her downfall, revealing the emptiness beneath her facade. Ram and I would move forward, stronger from the experience. If our story could encourage others to stand against manipulation and embrace honesty, then perhaps something positive could come from Marissa's downfall.
"I can't believe you brought homemade pudding." My business partner teased me, expecting fancier desserts. He tossed the pudding in the trash, leaving me speechless. Feeling angry and helpless, I went home. My wife seemed oddly cheerful, promising that the rude man would face consequences. The next day, something surprising happened when I went to meet the president. "My name is Danny Klein, and I've been working in an office for 10 years now. Today, I'm feeling nervous because I have to bring a gift to a tough business partner named Walter Morris. He's picky about gifts, and if he doesn't like yours, he won't even talk to you properly. Sometimes he'll even make up excuses to send you away. But he's important for our business, so I have to deal with him." One day, my manager came to my desk and praised our company's great patented technology. I agreed, but also mentioned how they'd become arrogant because of it. We used to work together closely, but things have changed. My manager looked at me sympathetically. I chuckled bitterly and ran my hand through my hair. I've heard that the president and his wife are nice people, despite Walter being difficult. I hope things improve soon. Yeah, things should get better soon. It's tough, but it's all part of the job. Thanks, I'll give it my best shot, I replied to my manager. But finding the right gift every time is such a hassle. If I get him the same thing again, he accuses me of being lazy, I complained. My manager suggested, the president's wife really likes pudding. Maybe next time you see them, consider getting some pudding. As soon as my manager mentioned it, I thought of a special pudding from a local store. It was incredibly smooth and creamy, just melting in your mouth. It had the perfect balance of richness and sweetness, exactly like the pudding my wife, Lily, makes. Lily runs a small pastry shop from our home, and her puddings are a hit with everyone in the neighborhood. They're so popular that they often sell out by mid-afternoon, loved by both kids and seniors alike. After work, I hurried home to find Lily already in the kitchen, preparing dinner. As I entered, a sweet aroma filled the air, making me smile. Lily greeted me with a cheerful welcome home, humming a tune as she worked. Excitedly, I told her about my conversation with the boss and how his wife loved pudding. I want to take some as a gift. Can you make some? I asked eagerly. Lily hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you think my pudding will be good enough?" I could see a hint of nervousness behind her smile, but it reassured me. Even though Lily makes amazing puddings, making one as a gift for my business partner's wife was understandably stressful for her. Still, she agreed with a nod and said, "Okay." Once dinner was ready, Lily didn't even sit down to eat. Instead, she jumped straight into preparing the pudding for tomorrow, insisting she needed to get it done. "Thank you, Lily." "I'm sorry," I said, feeling grateful but guilty. "It's no problem. I want more people to taste my pudding," Lily replied cheerfully, diving into the preparations. She moved back and forth between the kitchen and her shop, busy with the task. Seeing her determination, I couldn't just stand there watching. I decided to pitch in and help, following Lily's instructions closely. We ended up staying up later than usual, eagerly anticipating the reaction of the boss and his wife the next day. I fell asleep almost instantly. The next morning, I woke up to find Lily already awake, her head popping out from the shop, wearing a white apron. "It's ready," she announced, holding a tray of neatly wrapped puddings in her hands. "Thank you, Lily," I expressed my gratitude, not knowing how early she must have woken up to prepare everything. I thanked her repeatedly, feeling appreciative of her effort. Lily, looking a bit bashful, responded, "It didn't take too long because you helped me." As I reminisced about the morning's activities, a smile crept onto my face. I carefully placed the puddings, wrapped in white paper bags with blue ribbons, on the passenger seat and let out a sigh. With renewed confidence, I started the company car. There shouldn't be any problem with Lily's pudding. It's sure to impress. That's what I believed, until I heard a voice that crushed my hopes. "What's this?" Just like always. I mentioned Walter's name to the receptionist with a smile, and she asked me to wait for a moment. Taking a seat in the entrance, I made sure the pudding in the bag was safe. As I waited, I noticed Walter approaching from the elevator, wearing a slight smile. When he glanced at what I was holding, he immediately questioned, "What is this?" with doubt in his voice. I couldn't help but flinch. Nevertheless, I replied calmly, "It's just a small gift. It's pudding made by my wife, who runs a pastry shop." But before I could finish, Walter scoffed, "Pudding? Are you mocking me? Shouldn't you bring something fancier?" His words were filled with disdain, and he looked at me as if he were mocking me. At first, I didn't understand, but as it sank in, I felt my fists clenching in anger. Walter was a client I had been working with smoothly until now. I couldn't afford to ruin our relationship, so I swallowed my emotions and tried to reason with him. "Even though it's not fancy, my wife's puddings are quite popular," I explained, but Walter dismissed it, saying, "No way. I can't eat pudding made by an amateur." He snatched the bag of pudding from my hand roughly, leaving me stunned. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed, taken aback. My anxious voice clashed with Walter's dry laughter, attracting curious glances from the receptionist and other employees passing by. "I can't believe you give me such low-quality stuff," Walter remarked, lifting the bag to his face with a scrutinizing gaze. My anger surged, but I fought to keep my cool. Then I heard him say, "It's the CEO's wife's favorite. Even so, would you bring something made by an amateur?" I defended, feeling the need to stand up for Lily's skill. My wife is definitely not an amateur. Even so, you must understand that I can't serve such an unsightly pudding to the president. With that, Walter released his grip on the bag, letting it fall into the trash can nearby. It happened so fast that I couldn't react, leaving me standing there in shock. The bag with the pudding inside made a mournful sound as it landed in the bin. A small gasp escaped from the receptionist nearby. "I'll take care of it for you today. Just be more careful next time," Walter stated, his voice dripping with irritation. All I could do was stare at the discarded pudding and mutter a barely audible, "I'm sorry." Walter nodded in response, his expression unreadable. Whether he was satisfied with my apology, I couldn't tell. "I've got some urgent matters to attend to. I hate to do this, but could you please leave?" Without waiting for my response, he turned and headed towards the elevator. I stood there stunned, unable to tear my gaze away from the discarded pudding. Time seemed to blur, and before I knew it, I found myself back in my company car. The memory of Lily's hard work on the pudding weighed heavily on my heart, filling me with a mix of sadness and anger. Most of all, I felt frustrated with myself for not being able to stand up for her or myself. All because Walter was a business partner. I couldn't focus on work that day, my mind consumed with how to tell Lily about what happened. When I got home, Lily greeted me with a smile, casually sipping tea on the couch. Caught off guard, I paused in untying my tie. "Did something happen?" Lily asked, noticing my hesitation and concern. Unable to hide it any longer, I confessed everything to her. "I'm sorry, he threw away the pudding you worked so hard on right in front of me." Lily looked surprised at first, but then she gently squeezed my hand. "It's not your fault. Maybe there was something wrong with the pudding." Deep down though, I knew that wasn't true. Walter hadn't even bothered to look inside the bag before tossing it away. It didn't matter what was inside. If it wasn't up to his standards, it was going in the trash. Before I could apologize again, Lily stopped me. She seemed to think for a moment, then grinned mischievously. "That man's getting fired." "Fired?" I questioned, taken aback by Lily's comment. "I'm just kidding though," she reassured me with a soft chuckle. Even though it might not have been perfect, it's still disheartening to hear that the pudding I worked so hard on was thrown away. Her reaction was understandable. Anyone would be upset to hear their efforts were disregarded like that, even Lily, who rarely makes such remarks about rude clients. "But who knows, it could happen," she added mysteriously, leaving me feeling a bit puzzled. But that was the end of our conversation. Lily urged me to wash up early that night, so I bathed in a mix of confusion and frustration before turning in earlier than usual. The next day, still feeling weighed down by yesterday's events, I headed to work with a heavy heart. My boss had instructed me the day before. "I know it's not ideal, but tomorrow you need to buy a cake from the high-end Western confectionery store in front of the station." His words echoed in my mind as I stopped by the pastry shop near the station on my way to work and bought a cake. I placed the box from the fancy pastry shop on the passenger seat, letting out a sigh heavier than the day before. Yesterday, I had promised Walter that I'd come back today with an apology gift. Maybe because of the incident, Walter had responded with an even more arrogant tone. "All right, I'm counting on you this time," he said before hanging up. I should get going, I told myself, mustering up some motivation as I settled into the driver's seat of my company car. I drove towards the client's office, determined to make things right. As I entered through the automatic doors, a receptionist who recognized me hurried over. "Are you Mr. Klein from Company X?" she asked. "Yes, that's me, but please, lead the way," I replied. Following her, I stepped into the elevator, and before I knew it, we had arrived at our destination floor. The room I was directed to turned out to be the president's office. The receptionist knocked a few times, and when the door opened, I was ushered in. Inside, I found the president of the client company, his wife, and Walter, all looking uneasy. I had expected Walter to be his usual arrogant self. Especially after yesterday's incident, but I was surprised. "Nice to meet you, I'm Danny Klein from Company XX. Thank you for having me here today," I said, puzzled by the situation, as I greeted the president, Mr. Peterson. "You must be Danny. Pleasure to meet you." "I'm Mr. Peterson, and this is my wife, Anne," Mr. Peterson replied, cutting the formalities short. They exchanged glances, then called my name and bowed deeply. "We are truly sorry for what happened. Please accept our apologies," Mrs. Peterson added sincerely. "I'm sorry, What did you say? I asked, feeling surprised by how the president's tone suddenly changed. His wife, standing beside him, looked shocked too, bowing her head without saying a word. I quickly asked them to lift their heads, but they wouldn't. Then, I noticed Walter, who was standing behind them, also bowing. This was unusual because Walter was usually very proud and never apologized. But there he was, saying sorry with careful words for the first time. I was taken aback and didn't know what to say. Walter continued, "Actually, yesterday my wife found something in the lobby trash while she was cleaning." His wife nodded to confirm. She seemed upset and asked around about it. She found out that the pudding you brought earlier had been thrown away disrespectfully by someone. We called him to ask, and at first, he denied it, but later he admitted it reluctantly. Mr. Peterson gave Walter a cold look, and Walter seemed to feel it as he bit his lip and looked away. I didn't know Mrs. Peterson liked pudding. I thought it was from Danny, and I tossed it without thinking. "I'm sorry," Walter said, sounding quieter than usual. I was surprised by Walter's unusual behavior. Mrs. Peterson shook her head firmly. "That's not why I'm upset," she said in an angry tone, breaking her silence. "Danny, I've known about the pudding from Lily's store for a while. I knew it was really popular and it always sold out quickly, even though the store was busy. You made the pudding for me. It's disappointing that an employee of a manufacturing company doesn't appreciate the effort put into making a product." I was shocked that Mrs. Peterson knew about Lily's store and understood the emotions behind making something. Walter, looking even more nervous, tried to apologize again, but Mr. Peterson told him to face the person he was apologizing to and lifted his pale face up. "Walter Hooper sincerely apologized to me for carelessly throwing away the handmade gift from your wife yesterday." He faced me directly, bowing his head repeatedly. In that moment, I felt a sense of clarity. When I got home, Lily was sitting on the sofa drinking tea, just like yesterday. Without saying hello, I told her about what had happened today. Lily listened to me without interrupting until I finished. Then she smiled and said, "I thought as much." Her calm demeanor suggested she had expected everything that happened. Lily got up and made a cup of tea for me from the kitchen. As she handed it to me, she began to speak. "Actually, yesterday evening, a man in a suit came to buy our pudding, but we were all out. He mentioned that the wife of his company's CEO loves our pudding. Could it be the president's wife he meant?" "Probably Ann Peterson," Lily said with excitement, nodding happily. "It's amazing to know there are people who appreciate the effort we put into our products. It motivates me to make even better things for them." Lily took a sip of her tea, still smiling. Seeing her so genuinely happy made me understand Mr. and Mrs. Peterson's words better, but it also made me feel guilty. Did I truly value the effort of producers like Lily while doing my job? I was angry at Walter's arrogance, but was it because I thought we were doing him a favor by selling our products? Maybe I was being carried away too. Like Lily, shouldn't I strive to connect the creator's thoughts with the consumers through my work? As I thought about all of this, Lily noticed something and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Perhaps from now on, you'll consider both the creators and the users' perspectives." Lily's words made me feel a bit embarrassed, but more importantly, they gave me a new outlook on my job. After everything that happened, Walter's attitude changed a lot. He wasn't as arrogant as before and stopped demanding gifts. Now, we openly share our opinions and have a better relationship. Like Lily, I want to keep delivering the creator's ideas to users through my work. "Guess what it's like to travel abroad with my husband's money," my sister-in-law Betty boasted. "I wonder how it feels to rely not only on your parents but also on your brother," she added, sounding a bit rude. I felt really angry at her boldness. "Well, you're not any better. You stay at home all day but still hire a maid and don't do any chores," I snapped back. "That's enough, both of you, stop it," my father interrupted as our argument started to get out of hand. He calmed me down with a gentle look and then turned to Betty. "It seems like you both can't enjoy your trip with us here. We'll head back home. Sorry for disturbing," he said politely. "My name is Lisa. I'm almost 40 years old and I work while living with my father. My mom passed away from an illness 10 years ago, and my younger brother Jake, who is 5 years younger than me, has already gotten married and moved out. I live simply with my father in our Bay house. It's not that I can't afford to live on my own. I choose to live with my father because I worry about him. After my mom died, He started having a lot of health problems and had to stop working as he got closer to retirement age. His health got worse to the point where he wouldn't eat for days unless reminded and would be stuck in bed for almost 2 weeks if he got sick. I couldn't leave my dad alone in that condition. At that time, my brother Jake was already working as a lawyer and was engaged to be married. Jake and his fiancée were planning to build a new home near ours, so it was obvious that I would continue living with my father. Jake is very talented compared to me. I never expected his wife to be so difficult. Jake's wife, Betty, stopped working as soon as they got married and became a homemaker. She doesn't do any chores herself and relies on a hired butler. Her days mostly involve fancy lunches and shopping at expensive stores. Jake is busy with his job, so he might not have much time to spend with Betty, but her extravagant lifestyle is surprising. Living near Jake and Betty's house, I couldn't help but hear about Betty's carefree life. What made it worse were her comments when she visited us. "When are you going to move out, Lisa? Aren't you embarrassed to still live at home at your age?" She teased me. I often bit my tongue and just smiled vaguely, not wanting to hear such words from a woman who doesn't do any housework and just enjoys herself. I wish she wouldn't come over at all, I thought to myself. But my father felt sorry for Betty, thinking Jake might be too busy and she might feel lonely. He didn't push her away. Instead, he often invited her to have dinner with us. I wish Jake and my father could understand how much Betty's behavior was affecting me emotionally. But when I saw my father, unaffected by Betty's bold attitude, happily eating dinner with her, I couldn't help but feel like as long as he was happy, that was all that mattered. Why did Jake marry someone like her? I often wondered about it, but I figured there must be qualities in Betty that only Jake could appreciate. I chose to ignore Betty's rude comments and quietly continued eating. That day, like usual, my father invited Betty to join us for dinner. Jake had been really busy with work lately, and Betty usually just helped herself to food prepared by the housekeeper. Maybe feeling sorry for Betty, my father decided to buy some fancy ingredients and suggested that the three of us have a nice meal together. I wasn't very excited about it, but since my father insisted, I didn't have much of a choice. I went to the supermarket in town and bought some ingredients, then managed to make some dishes I'd never tried before. My father, who hadn't been eating much lately, was really happy and joked, saying, "I'm extra hungry today." Betty showed up quite a bit later than we agreed and plopped down in a dining chair without even saying hello properly. The dishes I'd made were all laid out in front of her. "Now that we're all here, let's dig in," my father said cheerfully, but Betty didn't seem happy. She pushed the food around with her fork, let out a big sigh, and said, "Do you really expect me to eat something that looks this unappetizing?" Betty shot me a disdainful look as she glanced at the dishes. I stared back at her, then turned to my father in surprise. He also seemed taken aback, his mouth hanging open as he looked at Betty. "Well, it might not be as fancy as what your housekeeper prepares, but Lisa made all of this herself. Can't you show a bit more respect?" My father responded sternly. Betty immediately frowned. "I never said I wanted to eat with you guys. I'm just trying to create some memories here, and you serve me something that looks so unappealing. Can't you think about how I feel?" "What do you mean by making memories?" I muttered under my breath, but Betty caught on quickly. She looked down at me and my father, smirked, and said something shocking. "Well, your father won't be around for much longer, will he? I'm the devoted daughter-in-law keeping him company." So, I was expecting a sizable inheritance. At that moment, both my father and I were stunned into silence. The room fell quiet. Could this really be the woman that the smart Jake chose to marry? Talking about inheritance before someone has even passed away. There's something really wrong with that. "You're going to live for many more years." Before I knew it, I was shouting. Even Betty, who had been grumpily playing with her food, stopped when she saw me venting my anger. "Don't talk about inheritance to my dad. He might just be another person to you, but he's family to me. He's also family to Jake. He's the only living relative left for us after we lost our mother." My father gently restrained me as I leaned over the table, breathing heavily. I slowly sat back down, my anger toward Betty still burning inside. With a deep breath that seemed to break the tension, I felt my pent-up emotions deflate. "I'll pretend I didn't hear what you just said," my father said in a calm voice. Immediately, Betty scoffed. "All I did was speak the truth. I don't want the inheritance to go to a woman who's still living with her parents." Betty's words were blunt. I didn't have the energy to be angry anymore. She boldly brought up what my father had tried to ignore and hurled her insulting words and actions at us. "I'll leave this old house to you, sister-in-law. Looks like you won't have to worry about losing your place to live," Betty said with a mocking laugh. I wanted to argue back, but when I saw my father quietly shaking his head, I held my tongue. My father was too forgiving with Betty, even as she feels lonely because Jake is often busy with work. It's not right to excuse an adult who doesn't know how to speak respectfully. My father glanced at my expression and murmured softly, "She's the one Jake picked." There was a sad smile on my father's face. He looked like a dad dealing with a troublesome daughter and also like a man who's been worn down by life. I couldn't bring myself to say anything when I saw my father's expression. I had words for both my father and Betty, but more than anything, I wanted to know what Jake thought about all of this. It's uncertain if Jake knows about Betty's behavior. If he's aware of it and ignoring it, then I feel obligated to speak up as his sister. In the end, Betty hardly ate the food I cooked and left early after a short conversation. Only my father and I remained in this spacious living room. Making memories, huh? Maybe she's onto something, I sighed quietly, noticing my father's figure suddenly appearing smaller as he muttered those words. Following Jake's suggestion, our family decided to take a trip to France. My father wanted to visit France while he could still walk without assistance, so Jake and I organized the trip. Initially, I suggested to Jake that he and Dad go on the trip alone without me, since Betty often made snide remarks toward me. I didn't want to spoil the happy atmosphere of the trip. However, Jake insisted that it would be better to have someone who usually observes Dad's condition, so he ended up buying 4 tickets. I reluctantly agreed to join them on the trip to France, and as I anticipated, Betty was in a sour mood the entire time, not speaking a word to anyone on the plane. Once we arrived, we headed straight to the heart of Paris and enjoyed sightseeing. My father was surprisingly lively, exploring every corner with enthusiasm. Betty seemed to brighten up a bit when Jake bought her a designer bag. She walked arm in arm with Jake, but I couldn't help but notice that Jake didn't seem particularly happy at that moment. I accidentally locked eyes with Betty, and she glared at me so intensely that my heart skipped a beat. "By the way, why is Lisa even here with us?" Betty let go of Jake's arm and confronted me. "I asked her to come just in case something happens to Dad. We need someone who can handle it." Jake tried to intervene, but it seemed like his words didn't register with Betty. She continued to stare at me, smirking. Betty spoke in a mean way, asking what it's like to use her husband's money to travel abroad. She said not to spend too much because plane tickets are expensive. Then she rudely suggested that Lisa could sleep outside instead of in a fancy hotel suite. Jake tried to stop her, but she didn't listen. Betty insulted Lisa, saying she lives off her family's money, including her brother's. Lisa felt really angry and upset at this. She fired back, saying Betty actually lives off Jake's money even though she's a housewife. Lisa pointed out that Betty hires someone else to do the housework. Their dad stepped in before things got worse. He calmly told Betty they'd leave because their presence was ruining her trip. He apologized to Lisa and asked her to check the bus schedule to the airport. Betty looked pleased, but Jake seemed worried. Jake suddenly realized that they would be left without anyone to help them once their parents left. He desperately tried to stop them from leaving, but their dad remained firm in his decision. He asked Lisa to check the bus schedule to the airport and promptly headed in that direction. Lisa had to follow her dad while keeping an eye on her brother and his wife. As they walked away, Jake shouted that they would be fine without their parents, disrespectfully calling them old man and old lady. Lisa felt upset at Betty for calling their dad old, but she didn't dwell on it. She hurried after her dad, listening to Jake's distressed cries and Betty's insults directed at him. Eventually, Jake burst into the cafe near the airport where they were having tea, looking frantic and sweaty. He rushed to their table and bowed his head in a flurry of panic. "I'm really sorry for what happened earlier. I'll make a proper apology later, but right now, I need your help with Betty," Jake said earnestly, bowing deeply. Dad and I exchanged surprised looks. "What happened to Betty?" I asked on behalf of Dad, prompting Jake to explain what happened after we left. Jake and Betty took a taxi to the hotel after we left on the bus to the airport. However, they encountered a problem once they were in the taxi. They couldn't communicate well with the driver because neither of them spoke French, and the driver didn't speak English. Despite the driver asking them something, they couldn't understand and ended up getting out of the taxi without realizing Betty was still inside. Jake expressed concern that he couldn't reach Betty on the phone and worried she might have been mugged or faced some other trouble after being left by the taxi. Realizing he needed help and feeling overwhelmed by the situation due to his lack of understanding of French, Jake turned to us for assistance. I reassured him that both my father and I are fluent in French. Despite Betty thinking of my father as incapable due to his age, he used to be a French teacher and I currently teach French. This trip to France was planned by Jake as a way for my father to reminisce about his youth. Upon arriving in France, my father seemed revitalized by memories of his time studying abroad. Since I also had experience studying in France during my student days, after parting ways with my brother and his wife, we shared stories about our time in France. My father listened intently, eventually nodding in understanding. Let's head back to the city center. I'm guessing the taxi that dropped you off might be waiting for its next passenger there, my father suggested. Following my father's advice, we swiftly prepared ourselves and embarked on a mission to locate Betty, who had been left behind somewhere. My father and I decided to split up and search for the taxi that had dropped off my brother and his wife when they returned to the city center. It's common for taxi drivers in the area to speak French fluently without needing to use English. Before I could reach them, my father managed to find the taxi that had taken Jake and Betty, leading us to the spot where Betty was supposed to have been dropped off. Thankfully, Betty was there, safe but looking weary. However, upon her arrival, it became evident that she had been robbed. All her bags and belongings were missing, leaving her with nothing. When Betty spotted Jake's face, tears started to form in her eyes, but she quickly put on a frown upon seeing us. "Why are they here, Betty?" Jake asked, clearly annoyed, and let out a heavy sigh. "If it wasn't for them, you'd have been stranded here with nothing, Betty. You should be thankful," Jake scolded her. Betty looked uncertain. "What do you mean?" "Without them, our trip would have been a mess. We can't speak French, so that's why we're in this situation." "But they're different. They're both French teachers, much better at it than I am," Jake clarified. Betty seemed uneasy, glancing over at us. A troubling thought crossed my mind, and I quietly told Betty, "If we hadn't found you, you might have had to sleep on the streets here." Betty clenched her lip in frustration. "And besides, Jake and I split the expenses for the trip equally. So how can you say it's all funded by an old lady living off her parents' money?" With that, Betty began to tremble. "It's your father's money anyway, right?" In response to Betty's argument, my father gently shook his head. "I didn't do anything, Lisa. Jake and Betty are doing well on their own. They're my pride and joy." Just as I felt Betty's glare bore into me, she fell silent, refusing to say a single word of thanks despite being helped. I had a lot I wanted to say to her, but my father's whispered advice to take it easy made me restrain myself and stay quiet. This must have been a very embarrassing moment for Betty. She probably never expected to be rescued by someone she had looked down upon. Even Jake seemed tired of Betty's stubborn hostility towards us, his frustration evident on his face. "Well, now that everything's sorted out, shall we continue our sightseeing? Let's go to a restaurant I used to love when I was studying here," my father suggested cheerfully. With my father's optimistic suggestion, our family was united once again. We had a fantastic time in France, ignoring Betty's gloominess and fully enjoying our trip. When we returned to the States, Jake kept apologizing to us and surprisingly decided to divorce Betty. I was shocked and asked him why they had married in the first place. It turned out Betty had lied about being pregnant and pressured Jake into marrying her. After they got married, it became clear that she wasn't pregnant at all. Jake had hesitated to divorce her earlier because of his public image, but he couldn't tolerate Betty's disrespect towards my father and me anymore. After the divorce, Betty was forced out of their home and couldn't continue living as a housewife. Without a maid to help with household chores, she faced difficulties. Additionally, she lost half of her assets due to a pickpocket incident during our trip to France. She must be working hard now to make ends meet. Meanwhile, my father became noticeably happier and more lively, reminiscing about his youth in France during our trip. I decided to quit my teaching job and started a French language school at home. I hope to renovate it soon and have my father join me as a French teacher. Our family's dreams are growing, and we're excited about the future. A funeral dress with a skirt that's too revealing makes me angry. It seems like you're trying to attract men by wearing it. I'm tired of my husband's unfair thoughts. I want a divorce. I'm leaving this house. My name is Kate, and I'm 40 years old. I love chocolate a lot and often end up eating a whole family-sized bar by myself without realizing it. I used to fight with my sister over chocolate when we were younger. Looking back, I wasn't always a mature big sister, but I've seen adults who act even less mature than I did when I was 25. Back then, I had just married my husband Kevin, who worked at a bank. We met through a friend and got married after about 6 months of dating. Everyone thought I had a perfect life. But things changed after we got married. Every day, when Kevin came home from work, I would greet him and ask about dinner. If it wasn't ready, he'd get upset. So, I made sure to come home before him, cook dinner, and clean up. It was a bit annoying, but Kevin's good salary allowed us to live in a nice house and have a comfortable life. I thought it was normal to have little arguments in a marriage, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But Kevin's behavior kept getting worse. Despite being married, I still visited my parents often, especially to see my 14-year-old sister who was much younger than me. Since our parents worked a lot, I felt like I raised her most of the time. It wasn't because my parents ignored her, but because I loved her so much and wanted to take care of her. My sister was often sick and had to stay in the hospital. Sometimes the doctors would say she might not make it through the night. Thinking about losing her made me love her even more. That's why even after I got married, I continued to visit my sister when she was out of school. But my husband didn't like it. He would say things like, "Who is more important, me or your sister? When a woman gets married, she should focus on her husband's family. My mother never acted like this. You're not doing your duty as a wife." He'd go on like this for almost an hour. None of my friends were married at the time, so when I talked to a senior coworker about my husband, she said, "It's your responsibility. When you're married, you have to prioritize your husband." I thought that's how it was supposed to be. Looking back, I realized I was naive. But even then, I couldn't imagine not seeing my sister. My sister's health was getting worse, and she was in the hospital again, only allowed short visits in a sterile room. It's natural for a family to want to be together in times like these. Sometimes, I'd even take a day off from work to go see her, and I started going to the hospital even on days when my husband was off. But my husband strongly disagreed with this. One day, out of the blue, he invited his mother, my mother-in-law, over to our house. With her there, he confronted me. "What are you even thinking? I work hard to take care of our home, and you can't even do that properly. You're just hopeless. I've told you so many times not to wear skirts, yet you still do. It's inappropriate for a married woman to wear a skirt. What's the problem with me wearing the clothes I like? And this dress was chosen by my sister. I can't just give up on it. See, there you go again, always bringing up your sister Kate. You should be caring more about me. After all, who do you think supports you? Hey, I work too. You can't just claim you're the only one providing." This argument isn't getting us anywhere. Listen, I've already called your workplace and told them you're quitting. You should be thankful. From now on, your focus will be on taking care of the house. What are you talking about? You can't make decisions like this without asking me first. I'm not going to listen to you. Starting today, you're going to live with my mom. Maybe then you'll learn how to be a proper wife. I don't understand what's gotten into you. You're acting irrationally. Shut up. The angry husband smashed a glass on the floor and continued to throw things around in his rage. Seeing the broken glass made me truly scared of my husband for the first time. I regretted marrying him, wondering how I ended up with someone like him. Later, I tried to cancel my resignation with my company, but they told me not to cause any trouble. It turned out my husband had demanded my resignation in a way that was almost abusive, so I lost my job and had to stay at home as my husband wanted. When I told him I quit my job as he wished, he apologized with a smile, saying he might have gone too far. But after seeing his true nature, I couldn't trust his apology. The next day, my husband surprised me by bringing home a group of his coworkers. He proudly introduced me, saying, "I wanted to show off my lovely wife." And his colleagues joined in, praising my appearance. Then, out of the blue, he declared, "My wife is an amazing cook. You have to taste her food before you leave." I panicked, realizing we didn't have enough food for everyone. "It's fine, just make something simple." "I don't want you to stress out," he reassured me. "I can go shopping if we need more ingredients," one of his female coworkers offered. "Your husband really cares about you. I'm jealous," he added. "No. He's just good at putting on a show. If he really cared, he wouldn't have brought his coworkers home after a big fight yesterday. I thought bitterly to myself as I started cooking with my mother-in-law. After about 3 hours of eating and drinking, his coworkers finally left. "Hi, you." "What?" I instinctively replied, feeling nervous about what might happen next, given his grumpy mood. I was anxious, afraid he might explode like the day before. "Can't you be a bit happier? Seems like I'm not teaching my wife properly," he criticized. I couldn't understand what I did wrong, but I didn't dare to argue. I was too scared. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, feeling defeated. "Even a child can apologize," he scoffed. "Mom, give her a score for today." He turned to his mother for backup. "Well, she's not doing a good job supporting her husband, is she?" "I can't give her any score," his mother replied. "Haha, see, even my mom agrees. She can't even give you a score. How funny is that?" My husband laughed and lightly tapped me. "And about the meal, I tasted a bit. But didn't Kevin find it unsatisfactory?" he continued. "That's right, Mom. Keep it coming. And what about her clothes? There were men among the colleagues, but she's showing too much skin. What do you think? As a woman, it's indecent to expose your collarbone. She should cover it with a scarf or turtleneck," he added. Whose fault is it that his colleagues suddenly invaded our house and I had to cook without even having time to change my clothes? I retorted. "It's Kevin's," I concluded. I couldn't understand why I was constantly being criticized so harshly. She really is something, isn't she? Despite my efforts to teach her every day, she just doesn't seem to learn. "Maybe she's just not very smart," my husband remarked. "No doubt about it," his mother agreed. That day, I endured a lecture for nearly 2 hours. By the time I finally got a chance to take a bath and go to sleep, it was almost 4 a.m. I had to wake up soon to prepare my husband's lunchbox, so I decided to skip sleep altogether. Despite everything, my husband continued to try to teach me a lesson, especially when I kept visiting my younger sister. About a month and a half later, I received the heartbreaking news of my sister's passing. "I wished it was a lie," I murmured, desperately hoping that my mother's announcement of my sister's passing was just a cruel joke. I had been warned countless times about my sister's critical condition, and I had even shared what I thought would be my last moments with her. I thought I was prepared, but my heart couldn't accept the reality. She was only 14 years old. I questioned whether my sister, who endured painful treatments and constant hospital stays, had truly found happiness in her life. As her older sister, I had been able to bring her joy. However, the last expression I saw on her face in the hospital was a smile. It seemed she hadn't suffered. "You fought bravely and you did your best. Thank you for everything," I whispered through tears as I hugged my sister and bid her a final farewell. The funeral passed in a blur, and I realized I hadn't been home for several days. I informed my husband about my sister's passing, but as expected, he didn't bother to attend the funeral. Instead, he said something hurtful like, "You should prioritize me over the dead." Unable to bear such cruel words at such a time of grief, I ignored him and hung up the phone. When I finally returned home, weighed down by sorrow, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me at the door, looking stern and unwelcoming. "You're quite late, aren't you?" my husband remarked. "A family member has passed away. I couldn't just come back in a few hours. How can you accuse me of lying so easily?" I replied, feeling hurt and frustrated. "What? Are you going through a rebellious phase? Always lying and defying me. Whose wife do you think you are?" he retorted. "Wait a minute, my sister really did die. It's not a lie," I insisted. I wonder. Even though you haven't greeted me at the door in days, even if you're wearing a skirted suit now, it's hard to believe you," he replied dismissively. "Why is it hard to believe?" I asked, confused and upset. "If you truly love your husband, you should be able to do it. It's your duty as a wife to welcome your husband home." My husband scolded me, accusing me of being incompetent. "And don't even think about denying it. Are you having an affair?" "What? No matter how many times I tell you," he dressed provocatively, "and the other day you were flirting with my colleague. You're just interested in other men, aren't you? What a disgraceful woman," he continued, hurling hurtful accusations at me. "What the heck?" I started to argue back, fueled by anger and forgetting my fear of my husband. But then it happened. "Divorce, huh? Fine by me. Someone as frivolous as Kate isn't fit for Kevin, right?" my mother-in-law chimed in. My husband mumbled, trying to stop her, but I seized the opportunity. I agree with Mom. Let's get a divorce, I declared firmly. My husband kept pleading with me to reconsider, but I had made up my mind. I couldn't risk staying with him any longer, afraid that his violence might escalate. This was my chance, and I was certain it was the right time to end our marriage. So I quickly packed my things and left the house. My husband kept insisting, "If you apologize, I'll forgive you." But I ignored him, thinking he must be delusional. He persisted until the end, grabbing my arm tightly and saying, "Wait." But I reacted instinctively, hitting him in the face with my bag and running away. I headed straight for a specific place, a room in an apartment that I had prepared just in case something like this happened. As soon as I entered the room, I received a call from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. "Hello. Kate, did you arrive safely?" she asked concernedly. "Yes, I'm fine. I'm in a taxi, so Kevin won't find out," I reassured her. "That's good. Make sure to hire a lawyer and proceed with the divorce quickly," she advised. "Yes, I can't wait to start living independently," I replied. In reality, my mother-in-law and I had been pretending to be at odds in front of my husband. It all began the day my husband brought a colleague home. After his lecture ended and my husband fell asleep, my mother-in-law approached me. "Leave this house. Get away from my son," she urged me. Each time my husband criticized me, my mother-in-law, who seemed to have her suspicions, would ask, "Really?" It turned out her late husband had been very much like my husband, and she had endured a lot in her own marriage. In her generation, divorce was frowned upon, so she couldn't end her own marriage. But it seems she wanted something better for me. Watching the interactions between my husband and me, she must have felt compelled to help me. That's when my mother-in-law, with the help of a friend, found a safe place for me to live alone. It's hard to believe she's related to my husband. I can't thank her enough for her kindness. After living in the apartment she arranged for me for 2 weeks, my mother-in-law finally visited, pulling along a suitcase. "Welcome. I'm looking forward to this new chapter," she greeted me warmly. Living with us, my mother-in-law discovered that her own son had changed. Before, he seemed like a good person, the image he presented to his colleagues. My mother-in-law blamed herself, believing that his behavior was influenced by his father's genes or things he witnessed during his childhood. For me, regardless of the reasons behind his behavior, I believe the real issue lies in his inability as an adult to control his emotions. So, I don't hold my mother-in-law responsible. My husband now takes good care of my mother-in-law, but only because he thinks she's on his side. I fear what he might do if he discovers she's been helping me with the divorce. That's why I suggested she come live with me for a while when she prepared this house. At first, she hesitated, worrying that once my husband and I divorce, she'd become a stranger to me, but I assured her, saying, "After everything you've done for me, there's no daughter-in-law distinction. You're like my mother or my sister. That's how I see you." On the way back from my sister's funeral, my mother-in-law steered the conversation toward divorce, intentionally supporting me. Recognizing her intentions, I quickly agreed to the divorce. I thought it would take more time and preparation to leave my husband, but thanks to my mother-in-law's help, that time came sooner than expected. I have nothing but gratitude for her. Finally, the divorce was officially settled through the lawyer. 4 days later, as I returned to the apartment, I was startled to find my ex-husband waiting for me outside. "I found you. You're trying to trick me," he accused loudly. Does he know about what happened? I wondered silently, trying to remain composed. "What do you want now?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "It's your fault that the credit card and bank account balances have decreased," he blamed me. "What are you talking about?" "I don't understand," I replied, feigning innocence. In truth, before the divorce, I was using my husband's credit card to gradually buy furniture for this house. I also quietly withdrew money from the bank account. It was all part of my plan, I confessed. When I discussed this with my mother-in-law, she encouraged me to go ahead with it, so I emptied the account without any hesitation. The reason why my unemployed mother-in-law and I can live comfortably, enjoying tea parties every night, is because of this money. That's my money. "You can't just do whatever you want without facing the consequences," he shouted angrily. "Remember the money we have? It's from the credit card we got after we got married and the money we saved together. Since we're married, it's both of ours," I explained, smiling at him. Suddenly, my mother-in-law returns from shopping and says, "Oh, you found out, didn't you?" Surprised, my ex-husband stands speechless behind me. "Hey, you're back." I greet my mother-in-law, trying to keep things normal. "What? Why is mom here?" My husband asks, confused. "Well, because we're living together," I respond, with my husband still puzzled and my mother-in-law acting like it's no big deal. "So, you lied about going back to your parents' house, and why are you living with Kate, not me?" he questions. "I'm lost," Kevin admits. "Well, I've lost hope in you, Kevin," his mother replies. "What? But I'm the one who helped Kate get away," Kevin protests. "Actually, Kevin, Kate and I had already planned to split up before you even knew about it," his mother reveals. "But Mom, you were saying terrible things about Kate." "Yes, well, when I was criticizing her, I was really imagining you in her place," his mother confesses. "What do you mean?" Kevin asks, confused. "Because you're not the sharpest tool in the shed, and you get all worked up over silly things like a woman showing her collarbone. I was worried Kate would be in trouble. She deserved someone better than you for a husband," Kevin's mother bluntly tells him. Kevin is taken aback by his mother's harsh words. Meanwhile, I find her response so unexpectedly funny that I burst into laughter. "Mom, you do realize I'm your son, don't you?" Kevin asks, trying to make sense of it. "Unfortunately, yes." "I guess I should have raised you differently," his mother responds dryly. I can't help it and my laughter grows even louder. "You're just a chit off the old block, like your dad. Watching you mistreat Kate reminded me of my own past. I worried that if she left you, you'd come crawling back to me. I couldn't take that chance. So I left you and moved in with Kate, for both our sakes," Kevin's mother explains. Kevin's mother's confession brings tears to his eyes. He finally explodes, "Is it my fault? Why? You're my child. You've been neglecting me." His mother laughs, almost incredulously. "Do I still need to mother a grown man who's almost 30, she scoffs. A few neighbors gathered as our argument escalated in the yard. They chuckled at my ex-husband's dramatic outburst, saying, "He's really making a scene." With people watching, he didn't dare lay a hand on us and retreated to his house. But the next day, he seemed to have completely lost it. He started spreading rumors about us to his friends and co-workers who used to hang out at our place. "My ex may seem nice, but she ignores her husband," he complained to anyone who would listen. One woman at his office fired back, "You know, your behavior is exactly why women are wary of their husbands. It's becoming a societal problem." Although no one openly agreed, the vibe at work made it clear that Kevin was in the wrong, and he felt increasingly isolated. In the end, my ex-husband, who turned out to be quite sensitive, couldn't handle the judgmental stares and whispers anymore. He quickly quit his job. It's ironic how he was so quick to criticize me but couldn't handle criticism himself. How sad. Feeling alone, he sent me a lengthy letter trying to justify his behavior and boasting about his greatness as a man. The letter was a whopping 10 pages long. I was surprised when I received the thick envelope. I had blocked his texts, but if he could write this much by hand, I can only imagine how many texts he would have sent. His final line was, "If you ever miss me, feel free to contact me." So I playfully replied, "Then please go ahead with the property division." That sparked another big argument. I used to be afraid when we lived together, but not anymore. I stood my ground with my lawyer. Even before his mother suggested I leave, I had secretly been recording his behavior at home, preparing for a divorce. All those months enduring his hurtful words paid off. With the evidence, I successfully sorted out the property division. After that, I moved out from living with my ex-mother-in-law when I found a new job. It was still close enough for a reasonable commute. Surprisingly, she had found herself a boyfriend. It turned out the person who introduced us to the apartment was her new beau. She left with him, holding hands, and said, "Come visit us once we're settled." I must admit, my ex-mother-in-law really surprised me. She's a fantastic woman, and it's clear why she's so well liked, regardless of her age. As for me, I spent my best years focused on work after changing careers, thinking I might have missed my chance for remarriage. However, I started joining regular online gatherings with my colleagues. This gave me more opportunities to casually exchange contact info with people I didn't usually talk to, including a director from another department who showed interest in me. At first, I kept my distance because we worked for the same company. But as we began having private online chats about things we couldn't discuss at work, we grew closer and eventually started dating. The head of the department, who hadn't been in a relationship for years since his last girlfriend left him because of his workaholic tendencies, treated me with caution, saying, "I don't want to repeat the same mistake." And happily, we decided to tie the knot next year. I was concerned that his parents might not approve of me, considering I've been divorced before and he's getting married for the first time. However, I'm relieved to see his parents are accepting and even grateful, saying, "Thank you for being with our son." When I shared the news of my upcoming marriage with my ex-mother-in-law, she was genuinely happy for me. Oh, and about my ex-husband, it seems he found a job at a different bank and got remarried. But knowing his personality, it's likely he's been divorced again. That makes it 3 divorces now. He works at a bank and initially comes off as charming, but he tends to blame his ex-wives for the divorces, which makes it seem like women fall for him. Even when my ex-mother-in-law tries to warn women about his true nature at wedding receptions, he manages to manipulate them skillfully. Well, after 3 divorces, it's likely he'll start being avoided by women. I just hope there won't be any more victims. With the way he's going, he probably won't have a good ending because he's likely disliked by many women. But honestly, it's not my concern anymore. See, it's clear now. All the money goes to your brother, as stated in the will. No need to doubt it, said the person in charge of the will. What? Are we really allowed to take all this money? My husband asked, looking at me and my happy sister-in-law. The will says that my brother gets the whole $100 million inheritance from our father. I feel really sad reading it. Does this mean I've lost everything and have to stay with this terrible man forever? But then, my brother says one thing that changes everything. My name is Catherine. I'm 55 years old, and I'm a housewife. My husband's name is Robert, and we've been together without any children. Robert is what you might call a typical male chauvinist. Ever since we got married, he's been in charge, and I haven't been able to speak up or share my opinions. Robert is 10 years older than me. He doesn't treat me with any respect. I feel like I'm his servant, always doing household chores. And if I do something he doesn't like, he's quick to criticize me. He even blames me for us not having children, which makes me cry almost every day. I've thought about divorcing him, but I don't want to worry my family, and I don't have the money to support myself. So I've been enduring his mistreatment and trying to stay strong despite his hurtful words. The only person who gave me any emotional support was my father. My father used to be a successful businessman. He built a company from nothing and turned it into a big company. Even though he worked a lot, he cared for my brother and me in his own way. But after my mother died in a car accident shortly after I got married, my father threw himself into work even more, maybe to distract himself from the loneliness. It was clear that my father's excessive work had taken a toll on him. He had a stroke and had to go to the hospital. Thankfully, his life wasn't in danger, but he was paralyzed on his left side. This was the cost of pushing himself too hard for so long. I managed to convince him to retire. I was worried about him being alone, so I convinced my husband, and we moved in with my father. Once he stopped working, my father seemed to age quickly. He started showing signs of dementia and soon became bedridden and needed constant care. Taking care of my father on top of everything else was overwhelming. I had to handle the housework, look after my husband, and now take care of my father, who had dementia. Sometimes he would be quiet, but other times he would yell and move around a lot, especially at night, or he would wander off. I was always tired from lack of sleep, stress, and the constant work. But sometimes my father would have moments of clarity, and we could talk peacefully like we used to. He would often thank me and sadly smile, saying, "I want to leave you with as much as I can." After 3 years of taking care of my father, he passed away. While I felt relief from the burden of caring for him, losing my father, who was my only emotional support, left me feeling incredibly lonely and sad. My only hope now was my father's inheritance. The inheritance amounted to $100 million, which would be split evenly between my brother and me, making it $50 million for each of us. With that much money, I could finally escape from my awful husband. It was my only chance for a better life. A few days later, my husband Robert and our eldest son's wife Naomi called me to discuss the inheritance. My brother, Naomi's husband, had been working overseas for a while. He came back for the funeral but had just left again yesterday, so Naomi was there in his place. We found your dad's will in the back of a drawer. Luckily, it wasn't sealed. So let's take a look at it right away, Naomi said. A will? I didn't know there was one. I was taking care of my father every day, but I never saw him writing a will. It bothered me that my husband, who didn't care much for my father, knew about it. I felt uneasy and had a bad feeling, Catherine thought. Let's read it, Robert suggested. All of my assets will be inherited by my eldest son Ken, dated April 1st, John Smith. Naomi read aloud. That's it? Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. She always thought her father's estate would be split equally between her and her brother. It was hard to believe that all of her father's $100 million estate would go only to her brother. Well, hold on a second. That doesn't make sense. Why would it be like that? Catherine questioned. My husband handed me the will and urged me to look at myself as I started to panic. Sure enough, it was written in the will, with my father's signature. I immediately suspected that the will might be fake. My father had always been fair to both my brother and me, and he wouldn't have favored just one of us. But could my kind and honest brother really keep all the inheritance for himself? As I pondered this, my brother's wife burst into laughter. Wow, we get to keep all of his money. It feels a bit wrong, but if that's what he wanted, we have to respect it, right? She said. I couldn't accept this at all. As I held the will silently, both my husband and my brother's wife glared at me. Hey, are you doubting this? If so, you can bring in a handwriting expert or something. Just because it's inconvenient for you doesn't mean you can start doubting it. You really have a bad attitude, my husband scolded. I'll do that, Catherine murmured quietly, deciding to have the will checked by an expert. To my surprise, the results showed that the will was undoubtedly written by my father himself. I was disappointed and fell into despair, thinking about the past. I had spent my life taking care of my husband and my father, enduring my husband's anger and hurtful words. It was painful, but the time I spent with my father was happy. I believe he cared for me too. The thought that my beloved father didn't care about me was more shocking and unbearable than not receiving the inheritance. I might have to leave this familiar house and land because they are part of my father's estate. My hope of divorcing my husband also seemed impossible now. When I told my husband about the appraisal result of the will at home over the weekend, he sneered at me with a self-righteous face. That settles it. All the inheritance goes to your brother. Don't go meddling in things anymore. The will was real. Always doubting, you worthless wife, he said, leaving the house after saying those words. Lately, my husband has been spending a lot of time away from home. He comes home from work very late, and he's often not home on weekends like this. I found it suspicious, but I tried to avoid seeing my husband as much as possible. Surprisingly, I felt relieved. Despite my husband's objections, I wanted to talk to my brother directly about the inheritance. Even though he worked overseas and was always busy, he was a kind and dependable person. I made sure beforehand that he wasn't too busy, then I gave him a call. After exchanging some brief greetings, my brother once again apologized for leaving the care of our father entirely to me and thanked me for handling the funeral and various procedures. Don't worry about it. By the way, Robert, about Dad's inheritance, was it always decided that you would be the sole heir? I tried to ask casually. It was hard to bear the thought that maybe I wasn't loved by my father, but I wanted to discuss it properly. Huh? What do you mean? All of the inheritance goes to me, my brother sounded surprised. I thought Naomi had told him, but it seems he was hearing about it for the first time, but the will was genuine, so the result wouldn't change. I explained the situation to my brother. I see. So the handwriting on the will is definitely Dad's, and that's all it said, huh? Got it. I'll need some time to think this through. I'll get back to you. I'll also make sure Naomi doesn't do anything until I've made a decision, my brother said before ending the call. I waited patiently for my brother's next move, feeling both intrigued and hopeful. A few days later, my brother contacted me again. He suggested that I look into Naomi's suspicious activities by hiring a private investigator. He also advised me to claim my rightful share from him. This legitimate share is the minimum amount of inheritance guaranteed to a family member, based on their position in the family. In my case, I could claim a portion from my father's $25 million inheritance. Even though the will said all the inheritance should go to my brother, this legal provision would still entitle me to inherit $25 million. However, my husband and my brother's wife were not happy with my decision. The decision has already been made. Don't mess it up now, they protested. But there was more to my brother's advice. I'm not asking for the $25 million. All I want is this house filled with memories of our father and the land. The total estate is worth $100 million, but the real estate property is only worth $10 million. I'll give up all the rest of the inheritance to my brother. Still, the two of them continue to argue. If this continues to escalate, my brother has instructed me to hire a lawyer to join the discussion. If it comes to that, I'm sure I'll inherit $25 million exactly, I asserted confidently. My husband and Naomi fell silent. Eventually, it seemed like they realized it was more beneficial to settle for the $10 million worth of real estate. We finally reached an agreement on how to divide the inheritance. A few days later, I received the results of an investigation I had requested about Naomi from a private investigator. I immediately contacted my brother. After many ups and downs, we successfully completed the process of inheriting our father's estate. My brother Ken rushed from abroad to help during the process. I inherited the family home and land, valued at $10 million. My brother inherited the rest of the estate, which amounted to $90 million. Naomi and my husband seemed pleased with how things were going as they had hoped. After finishing the inheritance process, the four of us left the law office and went back to our father's house. While enjoying a cup of tea in the living room, my brother spoke up, placing his smartphone on the table. Great job, everyone. Now that we successfully inherited Dad's estate, there's something I want to discuss, he said with a smile. With that, he took out a document from his pocket and laid it out on the table. The expressions on my husband's and Naomi's faces turned pale as they read the contents. The document was titled, "It's a Will." At the end of it, there was my father's signature and stamp, dating back about 5 years ago. This is a will that Dad gave to me when he was still working. It was made with 2 witnesses at a notary office, so it's legally valid, my brother explained. He continued, saying that our father had prepared it before he had a stroke. With his wife already passed away, he wanted to ensure his children would be taken care of if anything happened to him. The will stated that 1/4 of the total estate was to go to Ken, who already had a significant amount of wealth, and 3/4 to Catherine, the housewife. My brother gently held the will, explaining that our father had been clear about not changing it. He had stated in the will that any changes must have a reason stated, otherwise they would be considered invalid. It seemed our father, knowing the size of his estate, had prepared early to avoid any family conflicts. He was really pushing himself at work. I think he was considering all sorts of things like what would happen if he fell gravely ill or became senile. My brother said, his hand caressing the will. The will also contained a heartfelt addendum. I hope that there will be no conflicts over the inheritance and that the family will continue to live happily together. It was filled with our father's warm wishes for the family. Learning that I was loved by my father just as much as my brother touched me deeply, and my heart swelled with emotion. However, my husband and Naomi beside me grew pale. So, if you're going to change this will, the reason has to be stated, or it's all null and void. Even if it's in my dad's handwriting, maybe he was forced to write it when he was in a delirious state due to dementia. My husband suddenly slammed the table with a fierce expression. He glared at my brother and growled, "Hey Ken, do you have any proof? Are you calling me a criminal?" "I never said you forged the will, did I, Robert?" My brother replied calmly, then glanced at his wife Naomi sitting next to him. Naomi remained silent, which struck me as odd. Naomi had informed me about our father's passing, and I had attended the funeral. However, after returning abroad, I hadn't been informed about anything regarding the inheritance despite it involving me. My brother seemed to be looking to his wife Naomi for some reason, but she still said nothing. "Stop your arguing. The inheritance is already decided. The $90 million is ours. It doesn't matter what you say now," my husband shouted back. "What do you mean by ours?" "I'm the one who inherited it," my brother countered calmly. "Shut up," my husband snapped. The conversation was going in circles. "I'm not sure what you mean, but the $90 million I inherited is just worthless paper," my brother said calmly. "What?" my husband exclaimed, surprised. My brother explained patiently. "Our father's estate was valued at $100 million. Apart from the real estate, all the assets were stocks in our father's company. When our father was in charge, the company was doing well, and the stocks were valuable. But after he stepped down, the company started losing money, and it looked like it might go bankrupt. In the 3 years before he died, the stocks that were once worth over $90 million became practically worthless. But that can't be true, can it? My husband stammered. It's the truth. I inherited knowing that. I plan on restructuring my father's company, and since it didn't involve you, I didn't tell you, my brother explained. My husband seemed shaken and muttered to himself. He couldn't seem to accept the reality of the situation. That's when Naomi finally spoke up for the first time. Hold on, wait a minute. What are you saying? Are you saying I inherited worthless stocks while Catherine got $10 million? That's not fair, Naomi exclaimed loudly. Beside Naomi's outburst, my brother sighed. Naomi, I inherited our father's estate. You weren't at a disadvantage in any way. Why are you so upset? But I thought we were getting all of that $100 million. I had plans for it. My husband glared sharply at the flustered Naomi. So you and Robert were plotting to get all of our father's money, and while doing that, you were having an affair, weren't you? My brother accused. Naomi and my husband remained silent, frozen in place. Why? Naomi muttered hoarsely. My brother glanced at her before continuing. After our phone call, I started suspecting Naomi. Why didn't she talk to me about the inheritance? Why had her interactions with me been so brief lately, and why had she started ignoring my calls? I thought something was fishy, and when I saw her pictures on social media, I knew she was cheating on me. And soon, I'll be getting a lot of money. I'll be living like a famous person. I've been discussing with my girlfriend how we'll spend it. She said we'll have a blast when we get the money. I'm thrilled. But Naomi, I don't recall talking about this with you. I wonder who this girlfriend is. No, wait. You're misunderstanding, Naomi interrupted. Ignoring his confused wife, my brother brought out a bait envelope. He took some photos out and placed them next to the will. They showed Naomi and Robert going into a hotel together, looking very close. It was obvious they were in a tight relationship. I've been overseas, you know. I hired a private investigator to look into things because I was curious about your girlfriend, my brother said, showing the solid proof. Naomi started trembling. Looking at Naomi's affair partner, my husband, I noticed he was furious, completely red-faced, which was quite different from the pale Naomi. Curse you, poking around like some creep. What's all this nonsense about your silly will in these photos? It's absurd. My husband exploded. Stop. Suddenly, Naomi raised her voice. She approached my brother with a fake charm, like a bad actor. Hey, you're mistaken. It's all a mix-up. It's all Robert's fault. He convinced me that if I went along with him, I'd get all of your dad's money. Hey, wouldn't you want to get $100 million? I thought it was for your own good. My husband, who felt deeply hurt, stared at Naomi in shock. This photo? We were just fooling around. You were always away, and I felt lonely. But you're also to blame, right? Please forgive me. The $90 million is off the table now. Let's take the $10 million from Catherine's property. Did you fake the will? I asked. Huh? No way. Robert did it. He said it was simple and had it written by your dad. Look, it's not my fault, Naomi explained. When the truth about the fake will came out, my husband got furious and tried to attack Naomi, but my brother stepped in quickly. You jerks. You've got nothing on me. You'll pay for this in hell. My husband yelled, kicking a chair. While he raged, my brother calmly watched and casually took out his phone. Oh, looks like my phone was recording the whole time since we got home. I forgot to turn it off. My husband went pale and fell silent. By the way, I didn't mention it earlier, but this room has security cameras that record everything. I installed them because of Dad's bad memory, just in case something happened, my brother added. In the quiet room, only my brother kept speaking. Forging a will is a serious crime. Your earlier threat could get you in legal trouble. There's a police station nearby, and they'd be here soon if we report it. But since the inheritance matter is settled now, and if you promise not to touch Catherine's things again, maybe we don't need to involve the police. What do you say? While saying this, my brother began using his phone. I might as well send this recording to my computer overseas. After silently watching everything, I pulled a document from my bag and handed it to my husband. Robert, I want a divorce. Wait, hold on. Think about this, I'm sorry. We've been together for so long, haven't we? Who do you think has been providing for you all this time? My husband pleaded. I've had it. No more excuses. Either agree to the divorce or I'm calling the police, I said firmly, gripping my smartphone tightly with a determined expression. Robert slumped his shoulders and nodded. Naomi, it's over between us. You were planning to take the money and be with Ken, weren't you? I heard your conversations with him from a private investigator, I accused. Naomi hung her head, covering her face with her hands. After our divorces, my brother and I went our separate ways. Robert moved out of the house, thinking he had secured his significant inheritance, only to find out it was worthless. Naomi revealed the truth about the forged will, and everything that unfolded in the living room was captured on camera. Robert must have been furious, but he was powerless. The surveillance camera, initially installed for my father's care, also documented evidence of Robert's emotional abuse. Even if I had inherited my father's assets, I planned to use them as evidence in a divorce trial if Robert resisted. When I shared this with my brother, he suggested we utilize the camera too. After the divorce, rumors of Robert's affairs spread at his workplace, leading to him losing his job. His colleagues had seen him frequenting hotels with a woman who wasn't his wife. With his parents gone and now jobless and homeless, Robert vanished. While I had sought a portion of his assets, I wanted nothing more to do with him, especially after inheriting some wealth. Naomi, the woman Robert cheated with, faced the same downfall as him. Despite pleading, I don't want us to end. Please don't leave me. During the divorce proceedings with my brother Ken, the divorce was finalized when solid evidence was presented during mediation. Naomi had been spending recklessly while Robert was absent, but she was stuck with the bills, leaving her with nothing. Since she hadn't been working and had no home to go back to like Robert, she's now struggling to get by in a run-down public housing project, relying on welfare. Meanwhile, my brother Ken continues to work overseas, but he's selling the house he shared with Naomi and will be moving in with me into our father's house. With Ken's financial help, my life has become more stable, and I've been able to live comfortably. The value of the land left by my father has been steadily increasing, now worth over $100 million. Free from the responsibilities of caring for my dad and the emotional abuse from my ex-husband, I'm finally living a peaceful life, with time for myself. Alone in a spacious house, I started to think about how to make the most of it. Around that time, I watched a TV show about foreign exchange students staying with host families, and it gave me an idea. I decided to open up my spare rooms for rent. I offer affordable rooms to college and exchange students, and now my house is bustling with life. We share meals, play games, and help each other with schoolwork. It feels like we're one big happy family. On days when I have some free time, I enjoy reading books at the local library. Since I don't have kids of my own, and my marriage had drifted apart, I used to worry about being lonely after losing my father. But now, my days are filled with energy and joy. Even at my age, it's fulfilling to connect with young people and give back to the community in my own small way. There were times when life seemed too hard to handle, but now I have my brother, my roommates, and the people in my neighborhood to share life with. Every day is filled with contentment and happiness. I'm grateful for the simple joy I've found.